Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the last Planning Council of 2024. This afternoon, there is a whopping 8 public meetings scheduled for one. Oh, yes, thank you, Madam Clerk. I do need a resolution first before I dive right in. It is moved by Councillor Karen, seconded by Councillor Hunter. Be it resolved that the council agenda as presented on November 26, 2024 be approved as circulated. Please vote. Oh, I missed a whole section. I hope it's not a precursor for how this meeting's going to go. We're missing a vote. There we go. Thank you. Councillor, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Councillor Strength?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to declare on the first application, ZA 08-2023, Lowhead Bowens, Family Connections.
Councillor Hunter?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to declare on number 4, OPA 03-2024 and ZA 31-2024, also Family Connections.
Okay, and Councillor Morphy?
Yes, I'm the same, number 4.
Can you state a reason, please?
Your Worship, if you'd like to go into closed, I could.
Okay. No, we won't be doing that. I guess it will have to be written on your declaration. Okay, so we will go over to Councillor Strength for land acknowledgement statement.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We would like to begin today's meeting by acknowledging the First Peoples who, for thousands of years before us, were and are still the keepers and caretakers of this land where we now live and work, and in particular, the Chippewas of Rama, Wata Mohawk First Nations, and the Moon River Métis. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture and committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect with all First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people. We recognize all the generations of Indigenous people and their historic connection to this place, and we are grateful for the opportunity to gather here at this time. Miigwech.
Okay, thank you for that. This afternoon, there are 8 public meetings scheduled for 1 concurrent official plan and zoning bylaw amendment, 5 standalone zoning bylaw amendments, 1 standalone shore road closing, and 1 combined shore road closing application. Application number 1, ZA 08-2023 for Lowhead Bowens. Application number ZA 51-2023 for Rumble. Application number ZA 29-2024, 3274 Ontario Inc. Application number OPA 03-2024 and ZA 31-2024, 1121 Whitehead Road, Gravenhurst Inc. Application number ZA 32-2024, Habitat for Humanity, Ontario Gateway North. Application number ZA 34-2024, BBS Investments Inc. Application number Shore Road Closure 06-2022, WRE Investments Inc. And application number Shore Road Closure 01-2023 and Road Closure 01-2023 for both. The Planning Act requires that a public meeting be held before council decides to adopt official plan amendment, pass a zoning bylaw amendment, or close a shore road allowance and road allowance. The public meeting serves 2 purposes. First, to present to council and the public the details and background to the proposal, and second, to receive comments from the public and agencies before a council decision is made. I will briefly summarize the procedure to be utilized for the public meeting. The Manager of Planning Services, Adam Ager, will advise council as to when, how, and to whom notice of public meeting was circulated. Staff will then advise of the purpose and effect of the proposed zoning amendment and provide any additional information that is relevant to the application. Staff will further summarize any correspondence on file. From there, the applicant will be requested to make a presentation, followed by questions or presentations from the public, either in favor or against their proposal. Council will then have the opportunity to question the applicant, staff, or anyone giving presentations. The proposed official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendments, and shore road closings and road closing will then be considered by council later this afternoon. If anyone from the public in the council chambers would like to request notification of the decision on the application, please complete the form provided on the table at the back. Be sure to include your email address due to the postal strike and return to the same location. I will now ask the Manager of Planning Services to advise when and to whom notice of public meetings were circulated. Mr. Egger?
Thank you, Your Worship. Notice of the public meetings concerning the proposed official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendments were sent by first-class mail to the respective owners and assessed persons within 120 meters of the properties subject to the proposed bylaw and emailed to applicable agencies. Included with the notice was an explanation and a purpose of the effect of the proposal, a site plan, and a key map showing the location of the property in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act RSO 1990, Chapter P13. The public notices concerning the proposed shore road allowance and road allowance closures were advertised on the news and notices page on the town's website for 2 consecutive weeks prior to this afternoon's meeting. Included with the shore road allowance and road allowance closure public notices was a legal description of the lands affected and the date of consideration by council. The circulations concerning the proposed shore road allowance and road allowance closures were provided in accordance with the provisions of the Municipal Act 2001, Chapter M25, and the town's procedural bylaw.
It is important to note that should council pass any bylaws this afternoon, there is a 20-day appeal period during which time the applicant, the municipality, and certain public bodies, as defined by the Planning Act, may appeal the decision of council. During this appeal period, no building permit may be issued or other work commenced. Also, in the event there is an appeal, and in order to be kept advised of a possible Ontario Land Tribunal hearing, members of the public must request and be sent a copy of council's decision on the application. Public meeting number 1. I now declare this portion of the meeting to be a public meeting to deal with application number ZA08-2023 for Lowhaven Bones. I will now ask the Manager of Planning Services to please summarize the purpose and effect of the proposed bylaw and provide any additional information in correspondence relevant to the application. I guess I'll take the opportunity to be sure to mention that Councillor Jorgensen is Zooming in for us today, so he is present. He is just joining us virtually. So, Mr. Egger.
Thank you, Your Worship. The subject property is located on Brock Street between Muskoka Road North and Bethune Drive. The property is designated Central Business District Area in the official plan and is zoned Commercial Core C1A. The property is flat, cleared, and not developed with a principal building or structure. It contains 1 shipping container in the northeast corner that is subject to this application, along with various materials and vehicles stored and parked at the rear of the property that are associated with the principal commercial business at 210 Brock Street. Property is bordered by a chain link fence on the north and the east. The application was submitted in order to permit 1 shipping container on the property to be used for storage purposes for a commercial business located on a different property, as previously mentioned at 210 Brock Street. While council has heard applications for shipping containers in the Central Business District area, this application differs from other requests as there is no principal use established on the property. There is also little to no opportunity to adequately screen the shipping container given the size of the lot and its prominent location in the downtown. And lastly, this application seeks to permit the container in perpetuity instead of requested to be there for a temporary period. In this regard, staff are not satisfied that the proposed zoning bylaw amendment to permit the continuation of the use of the shipping containers on the subject land permanently to be used for storage purposes is appropriate and does not align with the goals and objectives set out in the official plan for the Central Business District area. With respect to agency comments, the chief building official commented that the storage container may require a building permit and an engineered design depending on the use. The manager of revenue, no objection or concern. The infrastructure technologist had a comment that the placement of the storage container is causing the property owner to park their vehicles on the southeast corner of the lot, causing a sight line obstruction to the entrance and exit of the independent grocery store. The obstruction poses a collision risk for vehicles traveling east on Brock Street as well. Also for vehicles stopped at the stop sign in the driveway of the Independent looking to the left to travel back east onto Brock Street. And lastly, the District of Muskoka had no objection or concern. And then moving through to site photos, so this is just a lot identification poster, and then the subject property is just to your left. You can see the chain link fence that was previously mentioned and the existing shipping container that is green. This is then looking along Brock Street to the downtown core. And then this is south, Gull Lake Park would be in the distance and the rail line. And then the entrance exit into the Independent grocery store is just where you see that manhole cover there, stormwater drain there in the road. This is looking into the property. Again, you can see the existing shipping container, green, vehicles parked, as well as outdoor storage for the associated business at 210 Brock Street. This is just another view into the property. Again, it is quite a small lot. And then this is the residential property immediately adjacent to the subject property. And then directly across the street, the business there along Brock Street. Another vantage, more material stored on the side of the shipping container. You can see then this is then the lot line between that entrance and exit that the infrastructure technologist made mention of, the chain link fence and that corridor. Staff would note there is some vegetation providing some screening, especially in the summer months when foliage is in full bloom. It's staff's opinion that the application is not consistent with the provincial policy statement, planning statement, my apologies, does not conform to the official plan and is not appropriate and represent good planning. As a result, staff are recommending that the application be denied, and I'd be happy to answer that any questions that council may have.
Okay, now ask if the agent or applicant is here.
Rick McCann, 1034 Cowbell Lane, Severn Bridge, P0E1 Norman 0. Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. As you know, it's not my habit to come before you with a request that's not already recommended by staff. I do appreciate staff's position. Their report is based on the town's bylaw and the town and the district's official plan. I'm trusting, though, that in this rather unique situation, you will consider permitting this container to remain. Unlike some other high-profile applications for containers in the town, this lone container has no objections from the immediate neighbors. I've talked with the owner of the office across Brock Street, the convenience store owner on the corner, and the owner of Independent Grocers. None of them object to the container remaining. In fact, only the owner of the hearing aid office across the street realized it was there. As you know, this lot is already zoned commercial, which permits the outdoor storage of materials and parking of cars as used by the Gravenhurst Plumbing store on the corner. The additional storage is important to their business as they buy inventory in bulk, like sinks and toilets, and then sell them during the year. Although they come in boxes, they can't store them outside or they'll lose them. As a reasonable compromise, Chip was offering to paint the container a neutral color to cover the industrial green. Chip has removed the surrounding brush that you saw in Adam's earlier photograph in preparation for having this paint job completed. And I have a copy of the contract with the painter to complete the job. This addresses the intent of the bylaw, which is to reduce the visual impact of these containers. If you think about it, if this were a wooden frame storage building with metal siding, painted beige, this would not be an issue. This would permit Gravenhurst Plumbing to continue to store their excess inventory on site without the cost of replacing it with a similar looking storage building. Adam, do you have those photos that I sent in? I wanted to refer to Yeah, that's a good start right there. I wanted to address the issue of safety coming on to Brock Street. You'll note from the photos that the container does not interfere with the sight lines of the existing grocery store parking lot. You can see the grocery store entranceway coming onto Brock just behind my car there, actually. Now, what's interfering, if anything, with access onto Brock Street is my car parked in that on-site parking spot. I stood on the site over at the office across the street, the hearing aid office across the street. I stood there for 5 minutes, clocked it, and watched as 7 different cars exited from Independent Grocer out onto Brock Street. In every case, they couldn't see beyond my car parked there, which is in a legal on-site spot, and they pulled out with their nose out onto the sidewalk to get a look around my car. So I'm suggesting that that's not a concern that we should be considering. I would ask that you permit this container to remain in place with the proposed paint job as offered by Chip. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McCann. Are there any members of the public who'd like to speak to this application? Okay. So I will go to council and ask if there's any questions. We're going to save debate for the bylaw stage. So are there any questions to our staff or to the applicant's agent? Councillor Johnston?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, Mr. McCann, just a couple of questions. I'm prepared to consider approval of this bylaw on the basis of consistency with other applications, but one of the things I wanted to ask you was, one of the things that we have done with the other applications is suggested a time limit on how long that container will be there. And I wonder if you or the applicant would be prepared to consider that, because that, to me, is it's an important factor for me.
I've discussed that with my client, Chip, and he's in agreement that that would be a reasonable request.
You've mentioned that the container will be painted. That will happen relatively soon if this is approved?
I don't control that. I got my fingers and toes crossed that he doesn't make me look bad, but he actually provided the contract with the gal that's supposed to paint it, and they've also cleaned out the brush around it, because between the fence and the container, they need to clean the brush out in order to get in to paint it. So now that he's gone to the expense and the trouble of taking the brush out, I don't see any reason why he wouldn't continue on, and he has a contract to paint it.
One final question. Recognizing that it is commercially zoned and that storage and vehicles are permitted there, it is rather disorganized. I wonder if, in addition to the painting, if the applicant might be prepared to clean it up a little bit so it doesn't look as unorganized. Recognizing it's legal, everything. You know,
Yeah.
it's the storage container that's at issue here. But if it could be limited, painted, and the lot cleaned up a little bit, that would satisfy my concerns.
Certainly is a reasonable request, and I'll pass that on to him. You wouldn't consider a second container there to put the next one in? No, I take that back.
Thank you. Your Worship.
Okay. Councillor, are there any other questions? I think we'll go over to Councillor Morphy.
Through you, Your Worship, I'm sorry. Also, Rick, how long's the container been there? I'm just curious about the longevity and if the container bylaw came in after the container or the other way around.
Sorry, Mr. McCann. We're into the 21st century.
Yeah, I forgot. You have to broadcast this. Chip tells me it's been there about 15 years, so it's well ahead of when the bylaw went in.
Councillor Robinson?
Through you, Madam Mayor. You said there's a house right beside a residence, is it? Do they own that property, or is that somebody else? And,
No, Gravenhurst Plumbing owns that as well.
okay.
I think there's tenants in there. I'm not sure. There was in the summer when I was by there.
Okay.
I think they rented out, but yes, it's part of the same ownership.
Thank you.
Council, are there any other questions? Okay, I have one. I think this is a news flash to staff about, and I won't say that I don't disagree, because in the case of it being allowed in perpetuity, would mean that if the land were to change hands separately from the business, that would still be a legal use. Is that correct, Mr. Egger?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you. That's correct. However, if council was to consider a temporary use bylaw, the property still could change hands, and then the expiration of that temporary use bylaw would eventually make that container have to go. So if the property was sold, say, next week or in a few months, and the temporary use provision was for a year, they would still have those rights for 1 year.
Okay, so another question is we would need to think about a minor amendment, is that right?
That's correct. A minor amendment resolution would need to be prepared, and a term would also need to be set. So council has the option of 6 months up to a maximum of 3 years. So council can, maybe at the debate stage, decide if that's the route they want to go, choose a time frame, and the minor amendment resolution would include that.
Okay, so council, I'm going to suggest, it sounds like there might be an appetite for a minor amendment, and that would be the time to discuss what it is. So I would look to Councillor Johnston to put forward a minor amendment recommendation when we get there. We're going to have lots of discussion prior to that, and there'll have to be a break, so maybe you can talk to the clerk about that. Okay? Are there any other questions? Okay. Thank you. Mr. Iger, are there any recommendations or comments to bring to the attention of council as a result of these proceedings?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, staff would recommend that the application as presented to council be denied.
Okay, the bylaw will be considered by council later this afternoon. If there are no further questions, then I declare this public meeting to be concluded. We'll just wait for Councillor Strength. I now declare this portion of the meeting to be a public meeting to deal with application number ZA51-2023 for Rumble. I will now ask the Manager of Planning Services to please summarize the purpose and effect of the proposed bylaw and provide any additional information and correspondence relevant to the application. Mr. Egger?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, the subject property is located on Xavier Street. The property is designated rural settlement area in the official plan and is currently zoned residential community 4, RC4, subject to special provision 1210 in the town zoning bylaw and as discussed in the staff report. There's currently a dwelling and a large garage on the subject lands, which are well screened from the road by mature hardwoods and coniferous trees, which you can see from this aerial photograph. The land is relatively flat and level except for a pond on the west side of the property, which is remnant from a former pit. Beyond the existing garage, at the rear of the property is a level and cleared area where vehicles and parking, materials and equipment are stored. There is also a shipping container and a fuel tank. The application was submitted in order to permit a contractor's yard on the property for a temporary period of up to 3 years. Although there is no definition of a contractor's yard in the town zoning bylaw, there is a definition of a contractor's establishment, which is defined as shall mean the yard of a contractor or construction company, which is used as a depot for the storage and maintenance of equipment used by the contractor or company, and includes facilities for the administration or management of the business and the stockpiling and storage of supplies used in the business, but does not include the wholesale or retail sale of building supplies or home improvement supplies. In addition to this, at the October 15th meeting of Committee of the Whole, Council may recall a resolution was passed by Council to permit the applicant to enter into an easement agreement to allow a temporary use over an unopened portion of Picard Lane, which is a means of alternate access to the subject lands. Through previous communications with the Director of Infrastructure, it is understood that Xavier Street is currently under its warranty period. It is not appropriate for heavy equipment to be traveling through the residential subdivision. As a result, staff are recommending deferral of the application to allow the applicant to provide an updated drawing which clarifies the details and scale of the business, including material storage areas, vehicle parking, and as well as about the development of Picard Lane and the road allowance, which is necessary to ensure that appropriate clauses are included within that easement agreement that was passed through resolution. The time of writing this report, the chief building official provided comment that the septic tank and field should be shown on the site plan drawing and heavy equipment and material should not be stored in that area. The Director of Infrastructure provided comments stating that Infrastructure Services was not initially in support of the proposed zoning amendment as it would increase the frequency of heavy construction equipment traveling within the Whispering Pines plan of subdivision. Council has since approved an alternate access point via the unopened portion of Picard Lane Road, and should the rezoning be approved, the town will be entering into an easement agreement for the use of the town's road allowance prior to the construction of an alternate access. The following would be required to be supplied: confirmation of an unopened road allowance property limits by an Ontario land surveyor, submission of an environmental site evaluation ensuring there's no species at risk present in the area, including the identification of any environmental constraints that must be considered, submission of a detailed road design stamped by a professional engineer, preparation of a reinstatement and revegetation plan once an easement agreement expires. Fire and Emergency Services provided no objection, subject to compliance with Ontario Fire Code and Building Code. The Manager of Revenue, no objection. And lastly, the District of Muskoka, no objection, and did note the property may contain species at risk. However, the requirements from the Director of Infrastructure have covered off those species at risk requirements through the forthcoming easement agreement should this project get there. In addition to that, 9 letters of opposition have been received by residents of the Whispering Pines subdivision, which were all provided to Council. Reasons for the opposition include increased noise, disturbance in traffic, movement and operation of heavy equipment, resulting in increased vibration, noise, and shaking, which could damage buildings, constant dust and debris, and it's a health concern, disregard for speed limits, decreased property values and desirability. Building in the neighborhood was done based on the understanding that Picard Road allowance would remain undisturbed, reduce the quality of life, preserving residential character, safety, peace and character, and so on. As noted, Council did receive all these concerns and are aware of them. In addition to that, 3 letters of support were received from residents within the Whispering Pines subdivision, which Council was also provided. Reasons for the support include trusted and respectful contractors, good neighbors, value to the area. Proposal removes traffic from Xavier Street. The time frame seems reasonable in their opinion. Satisfied the business will adhere to the safety standards and take precautions as it relates to noise and dust. Just again, so everyone is aware, both letters of opposition and support were all submitted to Council for their consideration. I'm now going to take you through a number of site photos, so please bear with me. This is standing on the driveway of the subject property and looking west on Xavier Road. This is then turning and looking east on Xavier, and then looking directly across from the entrance of the subject property. This is then turning into the subject lands, and you can see a neighboring property just to the left there through the trees. This is then up the driveway. Staff would note here, again, you can't see the existing dwelling on the subject lands or the garage. This is then moving into the subject lands, and this is the existing dwelling. And then for reference, I'll just back up one. If you see that gray sedan moving there, so that's the edge of the dwelling there, and then the proposed large shop in the distance. This is then moving closer to the existing garage. A close-up of that, you can see vehicles parked in the distance. Turning from that, another parking area, the fuel tank that was mentioned as well is on the left-hand side of your screen. And then here you can start seeing some stockpiling of materials on the right-hand side, as well as more stockpiling of materials here. This is then turning towards the entrance to the road allowance from that piece. This is then looking down the road allowance, looking towards Picard Lane. Again, this is then moving further down that road allowance. And then you can see just through the trees, basically the rear of properties on Xavier. This is then Picard Lane looking south towards Highway 11, and then looking back west from Picard Lane. So as detailed in the staff report, it's staff's opinion that the application should be deferred in order to obtain a site plan with more detailed information about the proposed scale of the contractor's establishment, which will then allow for an evaluation of consistency with the provincial planning statement, conformity to the official plan, and whether the application represents good planning. We also heard it's also foundational for the information that might be required for the forthcoming easement agreement for the Director of Infrastructure. As a result, staff are recommending that the application be deferred, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ager. Does the applicant or agent have a presentation they wish to make? Hello,
Hello,
just need your name and address.
Dan Reedman, 408 Stevenson Road East in Port Sydney.
Okay, great.
Todd Rumble, 1076, Kilworthy, POE 1GO.
Great. Okay.
I don't have a full-blown presentation, but just to go through just a quick rundown. We're not looking to expand, we're looking to dwindle down everything and get out of the subdivision. That is the ultimate goal. That's why we asked for temporary usage. Those stock piles, we've already started getting them out. Like, we're not trying to move in and run a retail yard out of there. I just want to be clear on that. We've already parked our float and all our excavators. We don't bring them back unless something is broken and we need to fix it inside the shop. We do most of our repairs out on other properties so that we're trying to limit as much use as possible coming into that subdivision as we possibly can.
Well, and that's why we applied for the variance for the road allowance, because I have no intentions on going into the subdivision to do work.
Okay, great. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so now I will ask if, well, you'll stick around if there's any questions, but I will ask, are there any members of the public who would like to speak to this application? Okay, come on up and give us your name and your address.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ross Watt, 1037 Picard Lane, Kilworthy, Ontario, P0E1GO. We purchased our property on Picard Lane 7 years ago and commenced building. So we are one of the original owners in what's known as the Whispering Pines subdivision, although we are on the outskirts of it. When we bought our land 7 years ago, we met Todd Rumble and his crew, and they have actually been instrumental in the whole development of that subdivision. In fact, the lion's share of site development, road creation was completed by the Rumble Company. For the last 6.5 years, they have operated out of that subdivision. This is the second property that they've owned in there, so they've reinvested in the community as well. And there's been no indication of any irresponsible behavior at all. In fact, when their trucks run through the subdivision, they do so below speed limit and with courtesy and respect to the neighbors. I can't say that about the transient contractors that come into the neighborhood. The pit road that they're talking about extending makes total sense. In the 9 letters of opposition, it sort of addresses that right off the bat. It takes the trucks out of the subdivision. Why they're objecting to that, I have no idea. It just makes sense. I'm on Picard Lane. If anything, I'm at a detriment, but I have all the confidence in the world that the Rumble trucks are going to respect our land and use the road with care. I probably have more concerns over the pit and the rumor that it is reopening, although it's a low-density pit, because those trucks that come in are not neighbors. They're just coming into our neighborhood to take goods out and leave. So if I have any concerns, it's with those vehicles coming in. But when we bought the land, we knew that there was a pit. It was not operational, but we knew it was already there. So guess what? We get it, we take it as we can see. So I think that this whole initiative about opening up the road allowance to Rumble Excavating makes total sense. It's in harmony with what the rest of the residents obviously want. The Rumbles are neighbors. They're not people coming into the neighborhood without any kind of interest in maintaining the neighborhood. So I would hope that council would see that, and for the 3 years, certainly grant them access to do what they need to do to continue a viable business in our community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for those comments. There's members of the public who wish to speak to this application? Okay. Hello, welcome. We might want to just tilt it down a little bit. That's great. Thanks very much.
I'm short.
I am too. It's just fine.
My name is Sandra Snow, and I live at 1087 Xavier Street, which is the house that you saw that is directly across the driveway from Rumbles. And I live with my husband, and in the other half is my daughter and her children. And I'm here today to support the extension of the variance for Todd and Gwen Rumble. Their entryway is directly across from my home entrance. I can honestly say that they make every effort to lessen the impact on all of us. The trucks generally leave once in the morning and return at the end of the day. There are tons of trucks from many areas bringing in other materials and construction stuff and whatever. When we built here, we anticipated it would be a few years of construction going on as new homes were built. There are still more lots to be completed. Extending the variance would be a courtesy we should extend to a neighbor who has been a great contributor to our development of our area. We personally have taken into account all circumstances, including COVID, health, and other factors, and know that this is the best solution as an owner, a neighbor, and a friend.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Are there other members of the public who would like to come forward today? Okay,
Hi,
welcome.
my name's Nancy Brennan. I'm here speaking for my brother Dennis Peters and his wife Phyllis, who live at 1063 Xavier Street. I'm here today to let you know they are in full support of the 3-year extension for Todd and Gwen Rumble. There are a variety of heavy trucks going up and down Xavier at all times during the day. Since the township resurfaced the road, we have not had any potholes and et cetera. The majority of the people that live in this community are still working and are going to school. People are still having work done on their homes where they use heavy trucks and equipment, which is unavoidable. They are using the same roads as the Rumbles during the day, like the Rumbles. I don't believe that a continuance of their permit will affect this beautiful neighborhood, to which a lot of credit can go to the Rumbles, as they have contributed their time and equipment to a major portion of this beautiful neighborhood. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there other members of the public who'd like to speak to this? Come on up. I've noted that there's somebody else, so.
Good afternoon, Robert Brown, 1060 Xavier Street, POE 1GO. Good afternoon, Council. My wife and I reside at 1060 Xavier, and the proposed changes occur right behind her property. I'm here today not to create any hardship or to Gwen or Todd, as I've done business with both of them. I have nothing but respect on both a business and personal level. However, I have a hard time allowing a company to be running construction vehicles, heavy equipment, right behind our property. If this proposal is accepted, I believe the quality of life will be dramatically changed, including diminished property value, not being able to enjoy the tranquility, in the backyard during, when these trucks are going to be passing by, especially in the summertime when everyone's trying to get out and enjoy themselves. We reside in a rural settlement area. I guess it's deemed Section F of the official plan. The plan has several subsections, namely F1.2, 2.1, F3, F4, F5, and all these sections refer to a scale of operation, and that's in keeping with the residential area. This operation, unfortunately, we don't believe is to scale of of our surroundings. Schedule B of the Town of Gravenhurst official plan talks about the importance of aggregate mining and quarry operations in the region. In that schedule, there's a policy of 16.15.7, which states that new or expansion of aggregate business is not permitted in a rural setting. And by allowing access to, by virtue of a road allowance, councils, in fact, allowing this business to expand their aggregate operation within a rural settlement area, which contravenes the policy. When my wife and I moved into this community about a year and a half ago, we were told the quarry operation was behind us, and the road was not really in use. And had we known that this operation was still going to be ongoing, we probably wouldn't be where we are today. Secondly, when we moved in, we've been fighting illegal dumping. I don't know if everyone's aware of that, between the roadway that runs between Kilworthy and Xavier. There's a road allowance that runs parallel with the highway. We had been cleaning that up forever, all the residents, been chipping in, doing it at our cost. And, finally they put up barriers to stop all that sort of stuff. And our concern is by opening up that access road behind us, it's going to bring in all the garbage that they were once dumping just down the road into our area. And of course, attracting unwanted animals. Council's received numerous letters regarding the proposed changes, both for and against. 75% of those letters were against the proposed changes. Having this much opposition speaks volumes of the changes and how that will impact the quality of life in Whispering Pines. The proposed zoning temporary provision use, if approved, will never change, as the renewal policy is up to 9 years, and that will continue on, probably forever, because very rarely does it go away. And, once that's in place, who knows what else that would allow at a greater scaled operation that's currently being applied for. Our rural settlement has no tolerance for contractors' yards within the community. This commercial aggregate yard and the proposed road will cause more damage to our neighbors than what the official plan can imagine. I too am a business owner in the area, and I'd never think about bringing my business into a residential area. In summation, I believe this proposed change to the bylaw was done quietly to allow a heavy construction company to operate out of a residential area, regardless of where one lives, either Xavier or Picard. No one wants to hear, see, feel, big construction vehicles loaded with aggregates rolling in and out. I'm hoping that we don't have this change go through. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Okay, thank you for your comments. I was going to go to the gentleman at the back. He was, sorry, do you wanted to come up? Yeah. Oh, I thought I saw you make a move earlier, so I was gonna make sure that you got next. Oh, yeah, no, I thought that you made a move to come up, so, my apologies. I just, didn't want somebody to, have the next shot without. Okay, so thank you for your comments. We appreciate it. Well, it's usually, I mean, if you'd like to give us the letter, I mean, it does sound like the application is going to be deferred. We certainly will make sure everybody gets to see the letter. That's what we can do, Mr. Egger?
Yeah, it's within council's discretion if you would like to indulge reading a letter on someone else's behalf, like others have.
Okay,
That
I
can
mean, we
happen.
can
If
have you
not,
read it.
we have the letters as well.
Okay. I think that if we're going to be deferred, then I think we can have the letter circulated. Okay. Great, thanks very much. We will make sure everybody gets a copy of that. Is there anybody else, any other members of the public who'd like to speak today to this application? Yep, come on up. You have to use the microphone. We need your name and mailing address, please.
Mark Hutton, 1721 Muskoka Beach Road. We're the original developers of the subdivision. Just a question on the deferment. I heard you say that you want to defer. What does happen, like if this gets denied and deferred and business continues on as usual, what is the other alternative?
So when we defer something, this is the public hearing. So if you have something to say, it needs to be said today, unless you want to send a letter in.
No.
But if it's deferred, there was a list, I think you came in a bit late, but there was a laundry list of things that staff would like to see in order to be able to recommend to council that they could support this application. So what would happen in the event of a deferral is that staff would be given the time to evaluate the information that they've been asked to provide, that the applicant has been asked to provide, and then staff would make a recommendation to council. I mean, the application is not dependent on staff's recommendation, but they are our experts in the matter, so we take their consideration very seriously.
Right.
So it would be, again, it would just appear on another agenda. So you would, unless there was a significant change, the neighbors would not be circulated again. So that's how it unrolls.
Well, I was the original owner of Block 60, which is where they're located, and we did come to council for rezoning of, it was supposed to be green space originally, but at that meeting, the whole Ontario protection of aggregate was discussed, and the fact that that pit is not going to close, it will always be a pit, sort of. To me, that supports the Rumbles application, because there's always going to be truck traffic in and out of the pit, because it's Ontario policy not to close aggregates. So
Okay, well, thank you for that.
just short and sweet, sorry.
Yeah, no, we appreciate that. Yeah, so that will be considered as well. And then we will discuss what council is going to do at the bylaw stage. So if there is no other members of the public who would like to speak, I'm not seeing any. Is now council's time to ask questions of staff or the applicant. Councillor Varney?
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. My question would be to Adam or to the Rundles. When these neighbors became, that they were uncomfortable with the business being there, had you thought of leasing some property in an area? Because I do know of two other construction people, Phil Foley from Gravenhurst and Larry Brown, who since passed, but they both lived, one in Cashie, one in Gravenhurst, and they did lease land out on Winhara Road or somewhere. So they weren't parking their equipment in a residential area, and I just wondered if you had thought of this. Thank you.
Yeah, we are currently and actively looking for land, and that's why we asked for this extension, because even finding land is expensive and challenging, as well as chances are pretty good we're gonna have to go through another zoning application to amend or change zoning wherever we go. There's not an abundance of commercial vacant property or even, you know, ready-to-go land with a shop on it. So we basically have to start from scratch. It's a process, right? So that's why we are trying to go this route. Open the road allowance to use that to stay out of the subdivision, to you know, mitigate risk on the road, the damage on the road, and try and get along with everybody, right? By staying outside the subdivision.
And that pit will always be there? So like they have a 20,000 kilograms of sand they can take out, and it's dictated by pits and quarries? So it just
yeah.
makes sense.
We have 2 dump trucks. We don't have 100 dump trucks. We have 2. One's a triaxle and one's a tandem. One of them is usually in the yard. Like, we only have 4 staff right now. And in the summer, we may go to 5. That's, in the winter, we usually drop down to 2 or 3. This isn't a large-scale operation by any means. We don't sell aggregate out of the yard. We bring back, if we have leftovers at a job, we bring it back, and that is for if a road washes out or a driveway at night and one of our customers or even the town, we've replaced culverts in emergency situations. We try and limit what we bring into the yard so that we're not trucking in and out of our yard. We go to pits. We use pits all over. We don't run material into our yard and then sell it out of there. That doesn't happen. And that's why we're trying to get the road allowance along the edge of the pit, which if they open that pit, they could put a screening plant in there and run it day and night. It could make massive amounts of noise and dust and all that. And I hope it doesn't happen, the same as probably everybody in the subdivision, but it could. So that's why we went to that route to go out, and then we would be running on the Picard Lane, which is a straight road right out to the highway. There's no turning of heavy trucks. And like I said, we've already moved our big stuff out of there. So we got 2 dump trucks and a handful of half-ton pickup trucks, and I think a 1-ton that we bring in and out. But a lot of the stuff, like I said, with only 4 employees, we have more vehicles than we do bodies to drive them. So a lot of times there's 2 or 3 vehicles parked at the shop and they stay there all day, and there's a half-ton and a dump truck go out. And that, a lot of times, that's it. And once we're out for the day, if we can help it, we'll stay out. We've even gone as far to park at the fire hall and get a ride in a half-ton, you know, to have lunch, and then take the half-ton back out and get back in the dump truck and go from there. So to reduce the damage and just the complaints that we may or may not receive.
Okay.
We have one neighbor that said if we clean up the yard, he would be extremely happy, and as I say, we're not using my personal driveway as, for vehicles.
Thank you for that. Councillor Morphy?
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. Hoping you can indulge me with a little background. On the one hand, I'm hearing this tranquil Whispering Pines community. And is there a fundamental change to the way you're running your business? Like, what's the catalyst here? You've operated for how long, and you want a little extension? Help me with the story a little bit so I understand it better.
Yeah, we were, at first, we were right at Kilworthy Road in Xavier. Todd owned that residence, and we operated out of there. I don't know the amount of years, but we were there for quite a while. And then he built his new house further in on a bigger piece of property and put a shop, and we've been there ever since. Nothing has changed in the way we do business. The same amount of vehicle. We've added 1 dump truck in the meantime. That's it. And that was a smaller truck to get into tighter areas. And that's usually the one that's parked in the yard. Because if we can use the bigger one to haul more material, it's obviously to our benefit to do that. So nothing has changed in the way we do business. we still do the same amount, or on average, the same amount of sales every year. But like I said, that doesn't come from our yard. That comes from pits and quarries outside of the subdivision for sure.
Councillor Moore, if you have a subsequent?
Yes, I do. So the only thing that's really triggered this is the road allowance. The change of access?
Actually, McCullens, which has the pit, their gate is on road allowance. So if it gets moved over, that might help with Rob Brown question.
Okay. I'm going to go to Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You answered my question. I was going to ask how big of a business you are, like what kind of equipment you're bringing in and out of there, and trucks, and it doesn't seem like a lot. The other thing was about the pit. So there is a pit that sits back behind the property on Xavier.
They've
and-
started cleaning it now.
Okay, so they use Picard Lane, that's the lane they would
That's
come
right.
out. So when was this pit used? I don't know if we have that information. And I know there's talk of it reopening, so would it,
It's never closed officially
Okay.
because it's hard to get a pits and quarry.
oh, sorry, not closed, not in use.
Okay, Councillor Robinson, I am going to, I think we're muddying the waters with the use of the pit. We're talking about a site-specific to
Right.
Rumble's property. As
Right.
much as I think the pit is a concern of some of the neighbors, the pit actually has nothing to do with this application. So I think we have to be very clear. Anything happening at the pit or on the pit should not be being wrapped into this application. Just because the pit is whether or not people are using it, that's irrelevant to this application. So I appreciate your line of questioning that a pit is a lot busier than what's happening here, but it's irrelevant to this conversation. So I just want to make sure we're not muddying the waters with talk of activity at the pit.
Okay, I was just
No,
with
okay.
the road, the allowance.
okay.
It would be used by the pit as well as you guys. It's the same road allowance.
So the road allowance, the pit, I assume, would have to have its own permission to use our road allowance.
I can speak to that potentially here. So I talked to one of the gentlemen that operate out of that pit or have operated out of it, and they're in talks, obviously, because the gate is on town road allowance. They're talking about moving it, but they're also talking about moving their entrance and bringing it around the other way, because obviously they own that side. So in order for them not to have to use the road allowance and go through an agreement with the town, they're talking about changing their access to come right out to Picard Lane on the paved portion. So it would just be us running on the road allowance at that point.
Mr. Iger, did you have something to add?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, I'd just add, my recollection of the approved operational plan for that pit does have the entrance coming off that road allowance right now, so that's in place. So any changes to their entrance would need them to change their operational plan with the Ministry of Natural Resources. But right now, it's approved and in place and active, so they could start using that entrance today.
Okay. So I guess I was just trying to make sure we got to where you wanted to be. So, okay. So, Counselor, are there any other questions? Mr. Iger, as a result of these proceedings, is there a recommendation you'd like to make to council?
Your Worship, as detailed in the staff report, staff are recommending that the application be deferred.
Okay. The bylaw will be considered by council later this afternoon. If there are no further questions, then I declare this public meeting to be concluded. For the public's interest that are here, I would say that this looks like it would probably be deferred. We probably won't get to discussing this further for about another hour at least. You're welcome to stay. However, you can tune in at home. But if I had a crystal ball, I would say that council will probably support the deferral because there is a lot of environmental impact and things that want to be, staff we'd like to see staff be able to recommend this for approval to proceed. So, just so you understand how it works, we're not going to get to the bylaw stage for another hour. We have 4 others, so just giving you the opportunity to leave if you wanted, I guess. We're happy for you to stay, but if, okay. Just give them a second. Oh, okay. So I think we will roll into the beginning of public meeting number 3. I now declare this portion of the meeting to be a public meeting to deal with application number ZA 29-2024, 1000193274, Ontario Inc. I will now ask the Manager of Planning Services to please summarize the proposed and effect of the proposed bylaw and provide any additional information and correspondence relevant to the application. Mr. Eiger?
Thank you, Your Worship. The subject property is located on the corner of Muskoka Road South and Sharp Street. The property is designated Central Business District Area in the official plan and is zoned Commercial Core C1 in the town zoning bylaw and as discussed in the staff report. Subject property is an urban corner lot on the south side of Sharp Street West and the west side of Muskoka Road South. It is flat and predominantly occupied with an existing 2-story building, which appears to exist of vacant commercial ground floor. The principal building contains approximately 3 commercial ground floor units with access from Muskoka Road South and Sharp Street, and existing residential units above, which appear to have been established without the benefit of a building permit. Building permits will be required to legalize all proposed apartment units. The rear of the property consists of an existing gravel driveway, a grassed parking area that is directly accessed from Sharp Street, with an attached garage on the southwest corner of the building. So you can just see in that aerial photograph there, a vehicle parked within the red perimeters, and that would be the parking area that's existing, and the garage is the white roofed portion of the building. The application was submitted in order to reduce the number of required parking spaces for an existing commercial mixed-use building at the following rates. Permitted parking, a minimum parking of 0 spaces for the commercial use where 3 currently exist, and permit a minimum of 3 standard-sized parking spaces for a maximum of 15 dwelling units accessory to a principal commercial use, where 15 would be required, representing a difference of 12 spaces. As discussed in the staff report, the proposal seeks to provide a mix of commercial and accessory residential space within an existing underutilized building in the town's central business district. The requested parking relief would permit the establishment of a maximum of 15 dwelling units accessory to a permitted commercial use in the 2nd story of an existing building, which would contribute to providing more rental housing stock in the town, as well as smaller units designed for single-person households, supporting the findings and recommendations from the recently completed Town of Gravenhurst Housing Needs Assessment. The subject lands are located within the town's primary central business district area and are fully serviced and are within close proximity and existing to proposed active transportation infrastructure and essential community services and facilities. The proposed use would ultimately support a compact form of development that will more efficiently optimize an existing land and infrastructure and support the provision of a mix of housing types and densities within the town. With respect to the proposed parking relief, the deficient residential parking spaces are not currently proposed to be accommodated on other properties and cannot be provided on existing on-street spaces, as they are not intended to accommodate long-term residential parking and are regulated accordingly. However, the subject property is located within a compact mixed area, which provides walkable access to urban services and amenities needed for daily living, as well as access to local and regional transportation infrastructure, which include the Ontario Northland, the Corridor 11 bus, and the district demand responsive transit. It would therefore not be expected that vehicle ownership would be required for each of the proposed residential units. Furthermore, staff are recommending the inclusion of a minimum 12 bicycle parking spaces to be provided in the amending zoning bylaw. Bicycle parking requirements currently do not exist within the town zoning bylaw, and the inclusion of this rate would require facilities to be provided to ensure that tenants without vehicle access may have different transportation modes beyond walking. The inclusion and location of these facilities would be confirmed through the site plan control process, and appears the site will be able to accommodate enough spaces to offset the reduced parking rates. The property owner would be also expected to communicate to prospective tenants that on-site parking is not available and that overnight parking on town streets and lots is not permitted, which can further be regulated along with other site design matters through the site plan control stage. Staff have also requested an inclusion of a holding provision in the amending zoning bylaw to require a functional servicing report and hydraulic modeling to be completed for water and sewer capacity requirements to be evaluated and confirmed to the satisfaction of the District of Muskoka. This was based on the comments that we received from the district, and those holding provisions have been included in the proposed amending zoning bylaw. With respect to agency comments, the Deputy Chief Building Official did cite concerns were expressed about the legality of the existing residential units in the building, as some work has progressed without the benefit of a building permit, and indicated that a building permit would be required for each dwelling unit, and that modifications may need to be made to the existing layout, and indicated that adequate fire separations, entrance and exits, access, window sizes, plumbing, HVAC design, door ratings, smoke, CO, and strobe alarms will need to be confirmed and provided. The infrastructure technologist provided comments of support of the application in principle as it pertains to creating more housing opportunities, but are concerned about the parking deficiencies within the town and operating that there is no allocated parking for the residential units beyond the 3 spaces. Infrastructure did request that the applicant demonstrate how parking will be accommodated and or addressed. The Manager of Revenue, no objection. Deputy Fire Chief, no comment, subject to Ontario Fire Code and Building Code requirements being met. The District of Muskoka had no objections, subject to the inclusion of that holding provision, which I previously mentioned. Enbridge Gas provided comments of no objection. CN Rail provided comments of no objection. However, they did advise that building code standards would need to be adhered to given the proximity of this property to the existing CN Rail corridor. And Alexicon Energy had no objection as well. Looking then to photos, this is looking south down Muskoka Road south from the property. You'll see here existing on-street parking for surrounding commercial uses. This is then looking north up Muskoka Road again, noting 1 to 2 story buildings within the area, so the subject property is within character. This is then looking to the front of the subject lands. So right now, commercial vacant on the bottom, approximately 3 commercial units there, accessed both from Muskoka Road South, where the photo's taken from, as well as to the right-hand side on Sharp Street. And then the contemplated units above would all be on the 2nd story and accessory to a commercial use. This is then directly across the from that view. This is then the Opera House. This is just then orienting you on what corner of the property, what part of the downtown this property exists on. This is then moving down Sharp Street again, more on-street parking, and one of the commercial entrances would then be accessed from this street. This is then moving towards the rear of the property in that grassed area where we saw the overhead shot of a vehicle being parked there. So this space would have adequate for the standard size parking stalls, 3 of them. And then that garage is also part of the property as well. And this is an existing right-of-way between the parking area and the neighboring property. As detailed in the staff report, it's the opinion that the application is consistent with the provincial planning statement. It conforms to the town's official plan, is appropriate and represents good planning. As a result, staff are recommending the application be approved, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ager. I believe we have an agent coming in virtually for us today. Mr. Varadas, welcome.
Good afternoon, members of council. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay, let's get to it.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Savas Fratis. I'm from Plan Muskoka. My mailing address is PO Box 5384, Huntsville, Ontario, P1H 2K7. I'm here representing the applicant as their agent. I'm a registered professional planner, and I want to just say that I think Adam did a great job presenting this application. He really stole my thunder, I think, on a lot of these points that I was going to make here today. So I'm just going to try to keep my presentation brief and just emphasize a few key points and then get over to council questions. First, I'd like to say that we have no objection to the inclusion of the holding provision to the application as outlined by staff, or the inclusion of the bicycle parking as proposed by staff as well too. Those are two items that the applicant has reviewed and has no objection to. As you heard, this building is proposed to be used with a commercial main floor with a residential above. The 15 units that has been described by staff as part of this application, the distribution of them is 4 studio units and 11 one-bedroom units, and they average at around 400 to 450 square feet in size. So they are fairly small, and as Adam had mentioned in his presentation, oriented towards the usage by a single person. For the purpose of the application really is just to implement the holding provision and the additional bike spaces, and also the reduction to parking requirements to implement this land use. I admit the application, the reduction seems pretty extreme in this case, but when you view it through the lens of the desperate need for affordable housing in the town of Gravenhurst, and the fact that it's located in a perfect location for people to be able to live and work without an automobile, I think this proposal seems to make more sense. In terms of housing, you heard that the housing needs assessment has been produced by the town of Gravenhurst, and that was released in September of this year. It specifically outlined that the number one issue was that there was an overall lack of supply of housing, and particularly affordable housing in Gravenhurst. So this proposal aims to provide some relief to that by proposing 15 affordable units into the rental mix in the downtown core of Gravenhurst. This is supported by key policies in the provincial policy statement, the Muskoka official plan, and the town of Gravenhurst official plan. All of them seek to include a focus mix of housing in urban areas, particularly affordable housing on municipal water and sewer services. By approving this proposal, Gravenhurst would also support their local transit systems and make them more sustainable and more efficient by providing a use in the downtown core that would be reliant upon those transit systems instead of an automobile. This is, again, also supported by the provincial policy statement, which encourages transit-supported land uses in settlement areas. As I mentioned earlier, this location of the subject lands are ideal for such a proposal. They're within walking distance and cycling distance of many essential services like institutional uses, grocery stores, schools, etc. Basically all your basic human needs for living. This is also in turn supportive of active lifestyles and climate change goals of the provincial policy statement as well. If it was in a more remote area of town or outside of the settlement area, then obviously parking regulations would be more essential to the proposal. But given the fact that it's located in an area in close walking distance to all these services, the lack of parking seems to be more palatable for such a proposal. So when viewed overall, the proposal seems to meet several key housing goals, both at a provincial level and a local level as well. It does show that it has planning merit for the proposal despite the lack of parking. In terms of parking, there really is no physical ability to accommodate more on the site at this point in time, as the building covers about 80% of the property. There is, as Adam has mentioned, lots of on-street parking in the area to support the commercial land use as it historically has. This also meets the character of the existing character of the downtown core, which has a general lack of large parking areas and to support the commercial land uses in the area. So finally, I think some of the photos show that the building is in its need of reinvestment. The passing of the previous owner has allowed the building to sit vacant for a few years while ownership changed and reinvestment began. Reinvestment in this building will improve its facade, its visual appearance, which will enhance the visual look from Muskoka Road South and from Short Street West, and allow for new commercial tenants to occupy the building as well. So in conclusion, it is my professional opinion that the proposal is consistent with the provincial policy statement 2024. It conforms to the town of Gravenhurst official plan and represents good planning. I'm happy to answer any questions council may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Varadas. Are there any persons from the public who'd like to speak to this application? Okay, come on up, state your name and address.
Mark Hutton, we actually own 310 Muskogee Road South, the old Gilmore Hotel. Our concern as building owners and property owners in Gravenhurst is we've seen a decline in the downtown core of parking, which I think it's all well and good to want to try and rectify the housing crisis, et cetera, but everybody knows nobody in Gravenhurst is commuting by bicycle. Maybe in the summertime, but in the wintertime, everybody has a car. It's already problems on the streets that I've talked to Adam about previously, bylaw department. There's more people than there are available parking spaces. Now, Penny, you can probably speak to it with the restaurant at Chuck's. Everybody going to that commercial space takes up parking spaces that for people that want to go to the retail outlets. It's been the same all over town. It's a complaint I hear over and over again. Now, for me, when we renovated our building, we had to have 1.5 parking spaces per. Now, I understand there is an option to take cash payment, which I have no problem with as long as the town is actually committing that money to providing parking spaces. And I see what's going to happen is all the people with the cars that don't have parking spaces at that building will probably end up using the library parking lot, which will then affect the people trying to use those services. So it's all well and good that people say everything's going to be affordable, everything's going to work out, but we just don't have the infrastructure in the downtown core to support these bigger projects.
Okay, well, thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else in the public who'd like to speak to this application? Okay. Council, are there any questions for, okay, Councillor, I've got a list here, so we're going to go to Councillor Cairns.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. Thank you, Mark, for those comments, because we've been through this many a times, and now the bylaw has changed about parking, so there's only a 3-hour limit for anywhere in the whole town of Gravenhurst. And I think that we used to have over 200 free parking spots that were available on First Street, behind all the businesses. We also have a lot that's adjacent on First Street, adjacent to the CN tracks. And that lot was always used in the past for those who needed it for parking. And we did allow overnight parking in that lot due to the fact that there were some residential businesses uptown that needed parking, as well as there were for longer than 3 hours, because their shift is usually an 8-hour shift. So I have huge concerns with only allowing 3 parking spots for a unit that could host several more than 3 people. I think that we, as the town, possibly may be suggesting that we look at our bylaw, our parking bylaw, and go back to where it used to be, where on the back streets, those 200 spots, and I'm sorry because I don't have my little map that was in the past. It was a great map for parking. So my concern would be in regards to trying to find parking, because out of, I think I heard 15 units, that's 3 parking spots. And, you know, wintertime is not, you're not available, it's not easy to travel, and we don't allow parking in the winter on the main street anyways. So That to me is a huge concern in regards to the parking. So I think that,
Counselor Cairns, I'm going to ask, that sounds awful lot like debate as to why you would or would not support it. I'm going to ask if you have a question for either staff or.
thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. I'm going to go to Counselor Hunter.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. My question is about the garage. Can we pull up the map showing I just want to make sure I understand this correctly. So and maybe this question is for Ms., yes. What are the plans for where the garage is right now? Is it in use currently as a garage? It says that it's going to be removed. So I guess I'm just confused about what is going to happen in that space, and could that not be extra parking?
It looks like Savis has got his light on, so Savis, we'll go over to you to answer the question. Okay, there you go.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the garage right now is in a pretty big state of disrepair. So usage of it for anything is not really possible. It's going to have to be torn down. And the space that is left behind, you think would be great to accommodate more parking, but the amount of space between the back of the building and the back of the property line is not wide enough to have an aisle and parking spaces up against the wall of the building. That would rely on needing to access over the neighboring property to do so, which obviously we can't, rely upon because there is no easement to do so. So right now the plan is just to remove that because it's in a state of disrepair and just leave that space, as an amenity space or whatever the use. Maybe the bike parking could go there or something along those lines, but that's what the plan is right now.
Thank you.
Counselor Morphy.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, this is to the agent. The 3 spots, I'm not telling you how to run your business, just asking. Are they assigned? Like, does Unit 1 get P1, does Unit 2 get P2, or is it a free-for-all? If 15 units and I've got 3 friends coming over with 3 cars, it's whoever gets to those spots first. I'm just trying to understand how those 3 will be monitored or run.
Savis, are you there? Oh.
Sorry, I think we're both clicking on me to speak and turning each other off. I honestly don't really know the answer to that. The way we've sort of fashioned the bylaw was those 3 units or those 3 spaces would be assigned to the residential use. I'm assuming they probably will be addressed as a first come, first serve, or maybe assigned to specific units. I don't know exactly how they'll be monitored or anything along those lines, but I don't think it'll be like anybody who has a vehicle can just go park there and the first 3 get a space and everybody else doesn't. That's more, I think we're looking at it more from in line that there will be, 3 units that are be permitted to have vehicles who rent from there, and the other 12 will not be rented to people who have vehicles. And that have to be make that very clear to the people who are renting those units, is that if you have a vehicle, you will not have a parking space and you cannot take this unit. So I think that was the intention of how the parking would be allocated to these units.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Strength.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you. I like the concept. I like the fact that you've included bikes into the proposal. Through you to Mr. Ager, last summer we asked for a cash in lieu donation, significant donation of a commercial property on the main street. And I wonder how this is different from that application and why that isn't included.
Mr. Ager.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Strength. Great question. So we cannot deny a property owner the right to apply for a zoning and bylaw amendment on their land. So the other example that you're thinking of, those property owners had every opportunity to apply for the same thing in the relief, and they would have paid for the zoning bylaw amendment application fee and potentially come to the council table to ask for that same relief. However, time was of the essence, and they were more interested in just getting the site plan approved and moving the business forward. They opted to not go to a public meeting and have a decision be made by council and pay the fee. So the application that's before you today, should they have decided that they didn't want to come and ask for parking relief from council through a zoning bylaw amendment, they have the opportunity to do the calculation of how much they're deficient and pay that fee.
Okay, Councillor Johnston?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you. Savas, please. Show your face. There we are. Savas, I love the idea. I really do, and I'll have more to say about the bylaw stage. But I just want to make a comment which is relevant to the question I'm going to ask you. It gives it context. The reason why, one of the main reasons I love about this is that right now there's very few options, if any, for single people to have a living unit. They just aren't there. Or if they are there, they're priced out of the market. And I can tell you that I've had a lot of people speak to me about if they had units downtown, they would in fact use public transit and bikes and get rid of their cars. Gas is getting through the roof. So my question is this. Have you given any thought to, from a marketing perspective, what your rents are going to be? Because it seems to me, Savas, that if it's too high, the tenants that you want to attract, single tenants, because these are sized for one person, the tenants you're going to want to attract to make this project viable will not be there. And so it's going to be a fine line for you to do market research and find out what rents would be. I hate using the word affordable. It's just too often used. But how would the project be viable with rents that people that you're marketing for, these single people? What's the gap there? What's the line? So that's my question. Have you any thoughts on that? Thank you, Your Worship.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I don't have, so I don't, obviously not personally setting these rents, but I did ask the question of my client prior to today's meeting, specifically because I was overlooking the housing needs assessment, and there was a definition of affordable housing, and it said that affordable housing was defined as rents of between $981 and $1,391 per month. And I just simply asked the question because I know that they haven't necessarily made up their mind exactly what's going to be charged yet. Will the rents fall within that affordable range? And the answer was yes. So that, I think obviously one bedroom might be priced higher than a studio, but somewhere in that range is what we're expecting these rents to be falling into.
I'm going to go to Councillor Jorgensen.
Thank you, Your Worship. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, okay. I'm just curious if staff are aware of anywhere, let's say that I was renting this unit and I got a job where all of a sudden I did need a car. Are there any locations where I could park a car in town and walk back home to this residence? Because I'm not aware of any public lots or anything that would permit overnight parking or a permit system or something. Is there anything in place anywhere in town? Are you aware of that?
Director Halford, you can take this one.
Yeah, thank you very much, Your Worship. I'm not aware of any formal lots of that nature. However, living in town, I know some folks who live in some rental apartments that don't have parking at their house, and they have informal agreements with neighbors and that to park at their place. I know 2 folks that do that. So, and actually, I've done that when I lived in Parry Sound. My husband and I had to do that as well. There wasn't a parking space at and we had 2 cars, so one had to park down the street. So it happens, but no, we don't. I don't know that there's a formal. I'm not aware of one anyway.
Mr. Egger?
Thank you. Building on the comments from Director Halford too, I also benefit from living in a situation where I rented a room or a unit that didn't have a parking space and it was expressly advertised in that. Unfortunately, I worked close to where I was living and didn't have a car at the time. So I've seen a situation where my rental agreement said, you're not given a parking spot and you can't have a car. And fortunately, that fit the bill, and I was, 800 meters to my work and could walk every day.
Okay. Council Murphy, question?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, on the bottom of page 26, I'm curious about this garage as well. In addition, it has been determined that a maximum of 7 parking spaces could be incorporated. Is it the plan to make it up to 10 from 3, or is this just, I don't want to say a wish list, but just a suggestion, or is it going to happen?
Mr. Egger?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Morphy, and Mr. Veratis had made mention of that notion as well. They'd have to actually get a right-of-way over neighboring properties to actually have it make physical sense with the requirements. So working on the assumption that right-of-ways or getting a right-of-way across neighboring property isn't a guarantee, they have to apply for this situation. However, in the future, if the neighbor and conversations open up, the only way to establish more parking spaces where that garage is to get a legal easement across the neighboring property, and then more parking stalls could be added.
Okay. Council, are there any other questions? I have one then. And I did pre-ask this question earlier. Is there any conditions we can put on this prior to approving to say, you can do it if you clean up the front? Like, let's just glue the paper back up. Like, this is the main street of our community. Here we are talking about everybody's going to be neat and orderly with their bicycles and all of these things, but look at it now. I think we have to give some thought on that, because this is in our downtown core, and if we're worried about, orderly things, I think we have to consider what's the front of it going to look like. We talk about site plan when we allow things and adding in shrubbery and things like that, and again, it's right on the corner by our Opera House and from a lot of businesses. So can we put conditions on and say, yeah, you know what, we can support this, but please do something with the outlooking facade of the building, even if it's just temporary?
Thank you, Your
That was a question, Mr. Egger. Is there something we can put in place?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, unfortunately, you can't put conditions on a zoning bylaw amendment. It's different than a minor variance application where we can add conditions to a variance. However, it is a public meeting and a public forum, so I believe the applicant's agents have heard your comments loud and clear, and hopefully they are able to articulate that and relay it to the applicant. Further to that, you mentioned site plan control. Because this is over 10 units, it is subject to site plan control. However, recent provincial legislative changes to what we can and cannot control through the site plan process no longer allows us to control architectural features. However, given that this is a public meeting, I'd also plug that there are opportunities, given that this is in our downtown, that there are incentive programs that the applicant could utilize for beautification purposes.
So, Mr. Veratis, I hope that came through loud and clear. Okay, Council, are there any other questions? Okay, with that, Mr. Egger, are there any recommendations you'd like to make to Council?
Your Worship, as detailed in the staff report, staff are recommending the application be approved.
Okay, thank you. The bylaw will be considered by Council later this afternoon. If there are no further questions, then I declare this public meeting to be concluded. So, Council, we're down 3. I'm going to suggest that we take a 10-minute break for, it's 4:33 according to this. Let's see you back here at 4:43, and we'll keep on going. Thanks so much. Okay, welcome back. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Rolling right into public meeting number 4. I now declare this portion of the meeting to be a public meeting to deal with application numbers OPA 03-2024 and ZA 31-2024, 1121 Whitehead Road, Gravenhurst Limited. I will now ask the manager of planning services to please summarize the purpose and effect of the proposed official plan amendment and zoning bylaw and provide any additional information and correspondence relevant to the application. Manager?
Thank you, Your Worship. The subject property is located on Lake Muskoka and is accessed from Whitehead Road. The property is designated residential waterfront, RW6D, subject to special provision 891 in the town zoning bylaw, and is designated waterfront area as discussed in the staff report. Not to spoil the proposal, but this is also an official plan amendment, a zoning bylaw amendment, and previously there was considered a consent application, which was before Committee of Adjustment earlier this month. So I will explain the aerial photograph in the context of a severed and proposed lot. Even though you don't see a lot line on there, it will just make more sense logically. So the subject lands, as it stands right now, is the entire area outlined in red. Existing structures on the proposed retained lot include a 2-story dwelling that has an approved building permit, a dock on the southern shore, and a 2-story boathouse with docks on the western shore, which is a poured concrete pad that is not shown on any of the site plans or building permit drawings. There's also a shipping container, a portable outhouse, and a disposal bin. Building permits have been issued for both the demolition of an existing dwelling and the construction of a new dwelling. The proposed severed lot is currently vacant, heavily treed with a mix of coniferous and deciduous vegetation, and characterized by steep slopes, bedrock outcroppings, which warranted the preparation of a site evaluation report to ensure suitable building and septic envelopes and waterfront access are available. The height of the land allows for long-distance views across Lake Muskoka, which we'll see later in site photos. So the application before you this evening is an official plan amendment and a zoning bylaw amendment, but it's just important to explain the context of what's on the property with respect to a severed and retained lot. So here we see proposed severed and retained lot. The severance line is this black line down the center, so it kind of juts out to the right here and down. As previously noted, the proposal was also submitted concurrently with a consent application, which was conditionally approved at the November meeting of Committee of Adjustment. 2 of those conditions were that the concurrent official plan amendment be approved, as well as the subsequent zoning bylaw amendment. In addition to that, the recommendations of the site evaluation report be included, and those site evaluation report recommendations have been incorporated into the proposed zoning bylaw amendment that's before you this afternoon. The official plan amendment was submitted in order to permit a shoreline lot less than the required 0.8 hectares to be created and retain a lot of 0.6 hectares. The zoning bylaw amendment application was submitted in order to permit the proposed lot areas and frontages of the severed and retained lots and to carry forward the existing permissions for the redevelopment of the retained lot. So as previously mentioned, the existing lot as a whole already has a site-specific zoning on it, which has some very detailed special provisions, specifically 891. The purpose of tonight's zoning bylaw amendment would also include a lot area and frontage to be added to those existing special provisions. The other special provisions already exist, and a building permit has been issued in accordance with those special provisions. So for that, the provisions would be as follow: a minimum lot area of 0.6 hectares, which would be new as of tonight's proceedings, minimum lot frontage of 174 meters, which again is also new as of tonight's proceedings, a minimum rear yard setback of 8 meters, dwelling eave projection into the rear yard of 1.7 meters, a minimum side yard setback for a dwelling of 3 meters, a dwelling eave projection into the side yard of 1.1 meters, a maximum dwelling height of 11 meters, and a maximum dwelling width of 30 meters. So again, as previously mentioned, the list of special provisions, save and except for frontage and area, are already approved and in effect in the zoning bylaw, and a building permit has already been issued in accordance with those provisions and are not being contemplated at tonight's proceedings. For the proposed severed lot, the proposed amending zoning bylaw would have the effect of permitting special provision 1333, which includes a minimum lot area of 0.8 hectares, a minimum lot frontage of 108 meters. In addition to that, as previously mentioned, a site evaluation report was completed on the property because of the steep outcrops that are on the property. So in addition to that, included in the zoning bylaw and that special provision is increasing the shoreline buffer to 25 meters on the vacant lot when normally it's 20 meters in order to preserve the steep riparian slopes and the robust vegetation, which provides an important filtration function with those slopes, and requiring parking spaces and driveways to be set back at a minimum 30 meters from the lake. With respect to agency comments, the chief building official, then the manager of finance had no objection to the proposal. The fire and emergency services, no objection, subject to Ontario Fire Code and Building Code regulations. The District of Muskoka had no objection, provided the appropriate development control techniques are used to implement the recommendations of the site evaluation report. In that respect, both through the special provisions in the zoning bylaw as well as site plan control, because this is a waterfront residential property and is subject to site plan control, those will be included into the required site plan agreements. A letter from a neighboring property owner at 1117 Whitehead Road provided a letter of support. And one letter from the MLA was received and circulated to council requesting that council consider a change in the proposed lot line with concerns about proposed minimum lot size being sought and its potential precedent. In that respect, it's noted that the proposed alternative lot line would not, that configuration would require further relief and actually require an additional official plan amendment because that lot line configuration would actually have both lots being under the 0.8 hectares. So it would require the applicant to go through an additional application. In addition to that, it would also require the appeal of the conditional approved consent that was done by the Committee of Adjustment. And in staff's opinion, although the lot lines being adjusted, the net development or high-level resulting development would be the same. We would still be seeing two dwellings being developed. It's just a matter of if one lot has 0.1 hectares more area or not. The retained lot, again, as previously noted, already has an approved demolition permit and an approved building permit. It's being developed without this application, and whether or not that lot line is adjusted really has no overall impact on the development that's proposed to be proceeding here. It should also be noted that the existing special provisions that are being brought forward would alleviate further lot creation. It speaks of creating more lots, but because there's going to be a very explicit minimum lot area and lot frontage on both the severed and retained lots, further lot creation couldn't be contemplated on these lots without going through another public process. Now I'm going to take you through site photos of the subject lands. The marker between the severed and retained lot is here, looking in the driveway towards the existing dwelling on the retained lands. This is a better photo of the existing dwelling on the retained lands. This dwelling has existing permissions through previous approvals, which are proposed to be carried forward through the zoning bylaw amendment being considered today. Again, as previously noted, a demolition permit has been issued for this structure, and also a permit for a new dwelling has been issued. This is then looking up from the dock towards the retained lot to the existing dwelling. This is the dock on the retained lot on the south shore of the property. This is then standing on the dock looking towards the severed lot. So when we talked about requiring a site evaluation report due to the steep slopes and rock outcropping, there's a good example of those characteristics in this photo. This photo then again further illustrates those steep rock outcroppings. And then from here, we're moving towards the plateau of this severed lot. And then this just gives a good depiction. That was the dock that we were originally standing on when the photo was taken. So this just gives you an idea of the topographical changes between the two properties. And then this is then into potentially a development envelope in a flat plateaued area. Again, I'm reiterating a site evaluation report was completed and did demonstrate that a suitable building envelope and septic envelope could be accommodated on the lot. And again, here's more flat cleared area. And then the views out to Lake Muskoka from the subject lands. Again, the site evaluation report recommended that a vegetated buffer of 25 meters be retained, an increase of 5 meters from the standard in the zoning bylaw. So again, it would be preserving those trees on the existing rock feature. As detailed in the staff report, it's staff's opinion that the application is consistent with the provincial planning statement, conforms to the official plan, and is appropriate and represents good planning. As a result, staff are recommending approval of the proposed official plan amendment and zoning bylaw, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Okay, thank you. I do believe there's an agent here to give us a presentation. Mr. Hunter, welcome.
Thank you.
I think we have your presentation.
Should be brought up.
Yep.
It's,
And there you go, there's the clicker. Great, you're all set.
okay, thank you, Your Worship. It's actually a pleasure to be here. I've been here quite a while as I work towards retirement, but that doesn't seem to be happening very fast. As I said, Rick Hunter with Planscape Inc., 104 Kimberley Avenue in Bracebridge, postal code P1L1Z8. So the basic proposal, again, I'll skip through this very, very quickly because your staff have already dealt with most of the issues. I did want to just touch base on the chronology and the context for it. We've had extensive consultation with town staff, starting initially in around 2021 and up until the application was submitted. Oh, I would point out the property is owned by 1121 Whitehead Road, Gravenhurst Limited. That's a company owned by, I believe, Barry Zagdansky, who's been a long-term resident of Muskoka Bay over quite a number of years. So they've submitted the application. Actually, over the last year, they've had site plan approval, as noted, for the redevelopment of the property. The applications for official plan amendment and zoning amendment and consent were submitted in September, again, following those discussions with staff that confirmed that the official plan amendment should be proceeded with on the basis of the frontage of, or the lot area, rather, of the retained lot. The application submitted had both a planning justification report prepared by myself and staff, and also the site evaluation report dealing with the steep slopes and natural features prepared by Mikowski Nielsen Associates. As Adam mentioned, the Committee of Adjustment granted conditional approval last about 2 weeks ago, and the public meeting is this evening. And I would also add that I have had a chance to review the submission from the Muskoka Lakes Association that was received yesterday. I'll jump right now to the recommendations, and then I'll just back up just a little bit as well. Reviewed the staff report and support the evaluation and the recommendations from the report. The applications implement the recommendations that are noted in both the planning report and in the site evaluation report. And I would be requesting council approval of both the official plan amendment and the zoning bylaw amendment, again, as recommended by your staff. The provincial planning statement, again, as Adam noted, the proposal is consistent with the PPS. I'm not going to go into any of those details, other than to note there are no conflicts or no inconsistencies with the provincial planning statement. The official plan amendment itself applies to the retained lot only, recognizing the proposed lot area of 0.6 hectares. And I would note, and this will kind of refer back to the letter submitted by the Muskoka Lakes Association. From early on in the discussions on the potential severance, there were issues of how to divide the lots. And I think when you look at the original map that's on it, it's got literally two peninsulas on it, and basically two different areas. We could have come in with a split of 0.7 hectares on each, potentially applied for an official plan amendment for those, for both of those as well. But through discussions with staff, it was determined that the vacant lot was, and the one that had the more steep slopes, was the more appropriate lot to actually meet the requirement that's in the official plan, and that we would be requesting the exemption for the retained lot that had the redevelopment approval already built into it. The retained lot exceeds the minimum frontage of 174 meters. The standard frontage is 60 meters. So while we're deficient slightly in the lot area, the lot itself significantly exceeds the frontage requirements. The amendment complies fully with the District of Muskoka official plan, and it satisfies the criteria that are outlined in the Gravenhurst official plan when you're looking at approving or considering an official plan amendment. The zoning bylaw, again, I won't go through the details other than to note that one of the reasons for being here is that the RW6D zoning restricts properties to their existing dimensions. So any application for consent requires a zoning amendment, hence the initial need for that. The retained lot did carry forward all of the special provisions from both the minor variance that was granted to some of the details, building details at the back of the house or back of the dwelling. And some of the matters that were carried forward from the original OMB decision on the application from 2010. Similarly with the severed lot, again, the main reason for the amendment is to recognize the minimum lot area and the minimum lot frontage, that in this case is also 108 meters. And also to add in the enhanced provisions, increase the shoreline buffer from the 20 meters to 25, and require the driveway and parking area to be over 30 meters from the shoreline. I would also note as well, as a matter of course, the septic system is already proposed or was already proposed at meeting the 30-meter setback. Comment, when you look at the lots, because they're peninsulas, the actual shoreline frontage is also considerably higher than the figures that were noted here already. Jumping to conclusions, the applications, again, in my opinion as well, are consistent with the provincial planning statement. They fully conform with the District of Muskoka official plan. They satisfy the intent of the Gravenhurst official plan and will conform upon approval of the official plan amendment. And it's really by virtue of the combination of the shape of the property, the extensive shoreline frontage on the retained lot, the compatibility with other lots in the area, and again, it's a large hill that is located on the neighboring property, all contribute to that low-density nature and the visual integrity to satisfy, in my opinion, the intent of the official plan. The zoning amendment and site plan approval will implement the recommendations from the site evaluation report. Both lots are suitable for shoreline residential development. The creation of lots will not have any adverse impact on Muskoka Bay or Lake Muskoka. And in my opinion, the applications represent good planning and are in the public interest. So with that, I would request Council's positive consideration of the applications. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hunter. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak to this application? Okay. Council, are there any questions for the planner or the presenter today? Okay. All right. Okay. So with that, Mr. Ager, are there any recommendations you'd like to make to council this evening?
Your Worship, as detailed in the staff report, staff would recommend that the official plan amendment and the zoning bylaw amendment be approved.
The official plan amendment and zoning bylaw will be considered by council later this afternoon. If there are no further questions, then I declare this public meeting to be completed. I now declare this portion of the meeting to be a public meeting to deal with application number ZA32-2024, Habitat for Humanity, Ontario Gateway North. I will now ask the Manager of Planning Services to summarize the purpose and effect of the proposed bylaw and provide any additional information and correspondence relevant to the application.
Thank you, Your Worship. Subject property is located on Muskoka Beach Road. The property is designated urban residential area in the official plan and is zoned residential multiple 1, subject to special provision 974 in the town zoning bylaw and as discussed in the staff report. The property is currently vacant and well vegetated, sloping gently upward from Muskoka Beach Road. The property is relatively narrow at the front, as you can see, but widens as it moves towards the rear of the lot. The application was submitted in order to permit the development of a 6-unit residential development consisting of 2 one-story triplex buildings that are intended to provide affordable rental units with dedicated funding provided by the District of Muskoka. The following relief from the zoning bylaw is being requested. remove special provision 974 from the zoning bylaw in order to permit a multiple dwelling use, permit a minimum lot area of 850.8 square meters for a multiple dwelling with 6 units where 900 square meters is required, permit a minimum side lot line setback of 2 meters where 6 meters is required, and permit a minimum rear lot setback of 1 meter where 7.5 meters is required. With respect to the relief being requested, it's the intention of the minimum side and rear lot line setback requirements is to ensure that buildings are appropriately set back from abutting properties and that site circulation and stormwater management can be maintained. The requested setbacks predominantly account for the irregularity of the lot line orientation of the property and the space required to provide a centralized driveway, access stairs, and ramps, and the required number of parking spaces on one site that can suitably be accessed for each of the proposed buildings. In addition, the property abutting to the eastern lot line is currently vacant, and existing development on the northern portion of the property is well separated from the subject property. The property to the west is developed with an existing semi-detached dwelling, which appears to have a greater side lot line setback than the minimum requirement of 1.3 meters, which would in turn have provide greater increased separation between the proposed and existing uses. The proposed setback will allow for site circulation, the establishment of a visual barrier around the property, the provisions of parking spaces away from abutting properties, and appropriate stormwater management. It is not expected that significant negative impacts would occur to abutting properties based on the provided separation, building design, and surrounding land use context. With respect to agency comments, the chief building official notes that the Ontario Building Code spatial separation and unprotected openings, wall construction, and natural lighting in rooms will need to be considered at the building permit stage, and also noted that firefighting access could be a concern. The infrastructure technologist did provide comments on the stormwater management brief related to design changes in swales. It's noted that since the time of the publishing of the staff report, an addendum or an update was done to that brief in response to those comments, and the infrastructure technologist did provide an updated comment of no objection or concern based on those changes. In addition to that, though, building on those comments, those proposed changes were also reviewed by the District of Muskoka, who'd also had no objection, but then did note that those changes resulted in a stormwater pipe that would go into a district road allowance, so that any work within that district road allowance would require the appropriate permit from the District of Muskoka. Staff did relay that information to the applicant and their agent and have been made aware of that. The Deputy Treasurer, no objection. The Deputy Fire Chief, no objection, subject to the Ontario Fire Code and Building Code. Enbridge Gas and Alexicon also provided letters of no objection. With respect to the Chief Building Official comment, and the Deputy Fire Chief has reviewed the proposal, specifically with the comment related to potential concerns about firefighting. Staff are satisfied, given that the town's fire department has weighed in on the application and didn't express concerns, that comment has been addressed. In addition to that, as mentioned, the infrastructure comments with respect to stormwater have been addressed through the process and the applicant updating that stormwater brief. In addition to that, one letter of objection was provided by a neighboring property owner. Concerns were expressed with the proposed rear lot line setback and impacts to the character of the area, as surrounding properties consist of single detached dwellings and semi-detached dwellings. Concern about lack of details with respect to the proposed unit size, building heights, and the public circulation. A request was made to defer the application to allow neighboring property owners to have more information on the proposal. A copy of this letter was circulated to council for their consideration, and they are aware of what was in the letter in its entirety. With respect to those concerns, staff would note that the property is within a zone that would normally permit a multiple dwelling use. When the properties in the surrounding area were all rezoned, specifically, this property was asked that it not allow a multiple dwelling unit be permitted. However, the RM1 zone normally anywhere else in town would permit a multiple dwelling use. It's also noted that what's being proposed before you is a single story. It's 2 3-plex buildings. So with respect to concerns around height, what's being provided and proposed here before you today is a single story. In addition to that, the property is located in a mixed area that has varying densities, whether it's a duplex or a semi. There's also apartments right across the street, which you'll see here later in neighboring photos. In addition to that, the relief being requested for area, so in the residential multiple zone, the area is calculated on the number of units provided. The relief that's being requested here is 33.8 square meters in area. And while there's a reduced setback being contemplated to the rear of the lot line, as we saw in the area photos, what's at the rear of the property right now, it's not developed. So there's no anticipated impacts with neighboring property owners. The stormwater and site management and grading will ensure that on-site water is not going onto neighboring properties. So in that respect, staff are satisfied. And lastly, staff would note that the application was circulated in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act. So moving into site photos, this is just a lot identification poster advertising the public meeting and looking into the subject property. This is then looking south across Muskoka Beach Road and the existing Red Oak apartments that you can see through the trees there. Looking northeast up Muskoka Beach Road, you can sort of make out Beach Grove Public School in the distance. Looking at the neighboring property to the southwest, a residential duplex, you'll see there's already an existing fence established there as well as some vegetation, so impacts there. There's already a visual screen that's been established, and the proposed development would not interfere with that existing situation. Moving further into the property, again, this is a better shot of the neighboring duplex as well as the existing visual barrier in that fence. This is then looking northeast in the property, which is well vegetated, and I would just also note here that you cannot see any development within the vicinity looking through to the rear of the property. So where that rear yard setback's being reduced, there's no visible development anywhere in the area through the lot. This is then looking northeastern. You can see the neighboring property in the distance, which is currently vacant and cleared and is fenced in anticipation of development. And then this is the last photo looking from within the site back to Muskoka Beach Road. As detailed in the staff report, it's staff's opinion that the application is consistent with the provincial planning statement, conforms to the official plan, is appropriate and represents good planning. As a result, staff are recommending the application be approved, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Egger. Does the applicant have a presentation they wish to make?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair, Council, and staff. My name is Debbie Vandenecker. I'm also from Planscape in Bracebridge, 104 Kimberley Avenue, P1L 1Z8. I am Habitat for Humanity's agent, and I agree absolutely with the staff report regarding the application, as well as the response outlined with regard to the letter of objection that was received. Habitat would like to convey their appreciation for the efficiency with which this has been processed to date, so they do say thank you for that. Everything has been covered by your staff. It's very thorough, but I am here to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. Now, I'm going to go to the members of the public. Anybody want to speak to this application? No, number 5. No, okay, great. Come on up. We just need your name and mailing address.
Yep, Steve Torrance, 89 Bow Street, Perry Sound, P2A 2L8.
Okay, great.
So I own the neighboring property there, and maybe Adam, if you can bring up the aerial photo there. Thank you. Yeah, that's fine. So obviously the house to the top of the screen with the white truck in the driveway is not there anymore. There was a fire, thank you. So that's the property I own. So there was a fire there, and I'm a little concerned that the fire chief department didn't have more of a concern with things. When the fire did happen, you can still go to the lot and see trees singed on and burnt down on the neighboring properties from that fire. And so having a development that close to the lot line would be, to me, a fire concern. And then, so it's just disappointing that that didn't show up, but anyways. As far as the parking goes, do they meet the 1.5 parking spots per unit? It's 1.5 though, right? So that'd be 9.
Okay,
So I'm
Adam
waiting,
will
I
work
guess
on
I'm waiting
that.
for a response on the 9.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, I'd defer to the applicant's agent, but the staff reviewed the zoning analysis and no parking relief was required as part of this application for the establishment of the residential units. I believe it's at a rate of 1-to-1, but I could be speaking out of turn, perhaps. Ms. Van den Acker could confirm.
Okay.
Go right ahead.
Thank you. We actually had contemplated parking quite a bit at the beginning, and Habitat for Humanity provided a large justification for reducing the parking requirement, but it was confirmed by staff that we didn't. We actually do meet the parking requirements in the zoning bylaw, so.
Okay, great.
And then just a little concerned about the snow load of the layout of the land there too, as far as where you're putting a big pile of snow, but that's a drawing that you'd have to do. And then as far as like the timing of the road closures and what the perspective is as far as getting the services across the road is a major concern. That's a very busy road, and we know that the services are across the road. So just concerned on timing and planning for that kind of thing as far as.
Mr. Egger?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to the member of the public, I mean, with respect to the proceedings that are happening tonight, should the application be approved, the proposal is for 6 units, so it wouldn't be subject to site plan control. So in terms of planning approvals, this would be the last stop. What their construction timeline and schedule would be and what time of year they're going to do that, that would be a better question for Habitat for Humanity or their agent. But
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Okay. So I guess until we get a building permit submitted, it's just open, is that right, Mr. Egger?
Correct. So once, if zoning is established for the subject property, then that's correct. They would have to still obtain the building permits. We did hear comments earlier about concerns around fire separation. I'd go back to what the chief building official wrote that will be required at the building permit stage, which is specifically as it relates to spatial separations, which is really a fire code piece, and wall construction. So a reduced setback requires you to use a different building material to make sure there's adequate stoppages of fire and a fire break. So although you might not have heard that necessarily through the deputy fire chief's comments, it was echoed in the chief building official who would be the one issuing the permits based on the entire Ontario Building Code.
Okay, I appreciate that. Okay.
Okay.
And then I think it's important too that as far as supporting affordable housing, certainly I'm all for that. I mean, so that's what I'm trying to do on the neighboring lot as well, provide more housing for Gravenhurst. It's a good thing. It's just Habitat used to be about ownership of a house. This appears to be a rental situation, and maybe I just want some clarity on if that is the case, and if their mandates have changed, and if council would be looking at things a little differently if we were looking at a purely rental side of things as opposed to home ownership.
I don't believe that's something that can be considered as far as a planning justification, but I'll go to Director Halford.
Yeah, thank you very much, Your Worship. No, tenure is not a planning consideration, whether it's owned or rented. And our recently completed, just to remind Council, our recently completed housing needs assessment specifically identified the need for rental housing in our community. So just leave that there.
Okay.
Okay, I appreciate that. As far as being that close to the lot line and the setbacks, I would ask that if the word habitat was taken away from this, would council still approve it? Hard question to ask. So I guess I would be in support of things if we could have a fence proposed on my side of things, as the other side does have a fence. I think that's a fair request at this point.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, firstly, staff evaluate proposals based on the planning policies, the provincial planning statement, the official plan, our zoning bylaws, and not the name on the application. So We treat all applications the same regardless of who's applying it and apply those rules accordingly. So it really doesn't matter who's applying. That's what we're doing when we do our jobs as registered professional planners, to provide you advice around the council table. In addition to that, as I previously noted, something like fencing, we do have fencing in our zoning bylaw. This property isn't subject to site plan control because it is under 6 units. So if it was something that you wanted to put on your own property, you're more than welcome to do so in accordance with the town zoning bylaw and the fence bylaw.
Okay,
Okay, appreciate things.
great.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks for your comments. Is there anybody else from the public who'd like to speak to this? Okay. Counselor, are there any questions for Mr. Ager? Okay. Seeing none? Oh, we got one from Counselor Jorgensen. Welcome back.
Thanks. Welcome. Yeah. I guess to Mr. Ager, while this property doesn't have any site plan control, we don't have that ability to impose site plan control. Just concern of mine is that we are taking this property and basically covering up a lot of it. Most of that property is covered by buildings or the driveway parking area. And I'm just wondering if there's any opportunity for us to ask for some kind of permeable paving type solution rather than I don't believe, and I could be wrong, but I don't believe that gravel is very permeable in terms of stormwater management. And rather than I know that they will have to do a stormwater management plan for this property, but is there any way we could ask for a better solution than just having all the stormwater running off of this property? Because it'll be considerable given the amount of the property that's being covered up.
Mr. Ager?
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Jorgensen. On the stormwater talk, I don't necessarily want to foray into things I'm not a technical expert in. However, my understanding was the updated stormwater brief involved a pipe that specifically was then running into district right-of-way, which would entail that the water is collected on site and put into a pipe and underground. So it's not as if there's going to be overland flow, from my understanding. Also, it's the balancing act of having the centralized parking area and close parking for everyone's unit so they can park and be close to their units. So that's why there's necessarily not the most amount of green space or permeable space that you'll see here. Understanding that the site is pretty constrained based on its lot area and size, and unfortunately we can't do anything with permeable pavers or things like that. Again, we don't have site plan control in this instance.
Councillor Morphy?
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to the agent from Habitat. I understand where the numbers are, that's where parking is. And where the stairs and the ramp, that is, let's say, their front yard. I just assume that'd be a little pad of grass. I guess would like that clarified. Is it all to be paved over?
Through the chair, thank you. I believe it's going to be gravel. I don't believe that there's any sort of plan to provide a grassed green area for a front yard. The idea being, of course, the access to the units is a very big deal, making sure that it's safe and there's lots of area for parking. So we did have this discussion internally as well when we were talking to the applicants about the site plan, that trying to balance those factors. And so without requiring less parking and asking for relief from that standard, we felt it was better to do it this way and let the folks have, container gardens or whatever they want in front. So I don't believe that that is the case. I could be wrong, but I have not heard that plan.
Okay, I'm going to go back to Councillor Jorgensen.
Thanks, Your Worship. Another question probably for Ms. Vandenacker is the parking turning radius looks very, very tight to me, and I'm just curious, again, because we can't impose site plan control, but have your engineers looked at how tight those turns are? Because I'm just trying to picture when you've got a vehicle in spot number 6 and number 2, turning into number 5 or any of those other spots might be awfully tight from what I can see.
Thank you, through the chair. We asked the same question as well, and so our designer created the parking spaces as per the provisions of the zoning bylaw and the turn radius as we normally do. It does look tight, I agree. It's a small site, it is constrained. The shape is a bit odd, so we are confident that everybody can move around appropriately. We've also heard that it is very likely that everybody is not going to have a car, so there's likely to be more space on that site than actually would show with all the cars in there. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Cairns?
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. So as I'm understanding it, then there is no green space for if there are young kids that are there to play, there's no place for them to play except for in the gravel. And so I just, I always thought that we wanted to make sure that there was green space for the children if they're tenants. And also, just a note that the beach road is a very busy road, and I hope I'm not talking debate here, but I just want to be sure that there's no sidewalks on that side of the road, and in order to get to the school, they would have to walk along the curb. And I know that they could cross over the road and then get back over to the other side with a crosswalk, but I just wonder, and I'm concerned that there's no green space or sidewalks. So I wonder if that's any concern, or will that happen?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Cairns. So there is some greenery and green space being provided on the site plan, whether it's a formal backyard that we're accustomed to. I would argue that's not what's being provided here. Again, the trade-off again is, affordable housing. Also another plug for things that we're working on, Parks, Trails, Master Plan, opportunities to provide other green space in the town. I know your concern is about the sidewalks and people walking to the public school there, but right now any other resident that's living up and down that road has to endure the same thing right now too, whether or not they live at this property or the one next door. That's the same situation. But there are opportunities for the town to, hopefully provide more parkland and green space in the future that will allow for more developments like this to happen in the future where they could use more community facilities.
Subsequent?
Yes, thank you. And through you, so is this part of the new Build More Homes Faster and Stronger that we don't, that the government's not requiring us to have green space? Because I know in subdivisions, we ask that they either give us money in parkland or they give us money or they give us parkland. And I don't see either option there.
We're going to go over to Director Halford. I think that's because we're not creating a new lot, but I'll let Director Halford.
That's right, Your Worship. In this case, it's not a lot creation, therefore it's not subject to parkland dedication requirements.
Okay. Councillor, are there any other questions? I had one while you're there, if you don't mind. One thing that I'm always concerned about is outdoor storage. So not everybody has a car, but what about bikes? Is there outdoor storage to make that sort of thing easier? Kids' toys laying around, things like that. So are the residents going to have access to some outdoor storage for those sort of items?
Through you, I can pass that along. I'm not aware, it's not been part of the discussions that I've had with Habitat, but I'm sure that is a consideration with, folks moving in and wanting to make this the home that they have been looking for. So yeah, I'm sure.
Great. So is there anybody else have anything? Mr. Ager, as a result of these proceedings, is there anything you'd like to bring to the attention of council?
Your Worship, as detailed in the staff report, staff would recommend the application be approved.
Okay. The bylaw will be considered by council later this afternoon. If there are no further questions, then I declare this public meeting to be concluded. I now declare this portion of the meeting to be a public meeting to deal with application number ZA 34-2024 BBS Investments, Inc. I will now ask the Manager of Planning Services to please summarize the purpose and effect of the proposed bylaw and provide any additional information and correspondence relevant to the application. Mr. Egger?
Thank you, Your Worship. The subject property is located on the corner of Muskoka Road South and Brock Street. The property is designated Central Business District Area in the official plan and is zoned Commercial Core C1 in the town zoning bylaw and as discussed in the staff report. The property is located at the southeast intersection of the downtown's main intersection, Muskoka Bay Road, Bay and Brock, and is a predominant and visible anchor of the anchor property to the downtown. The existing building has 2 residential units on the second floor with commercial uses in 4 separate units on the main floor. The application was submitted in order to permit the temporary use of a real estate office for a period of 3 years. The requested real estate office would be located in the largest and most visible unit which fronts on the Muskoka Road South. The Central Business District area is to be the focus of retail, office, employment, institutional uses, and cultural land uses within the Gravenhurst Urban Center. Based on the feedback from the BIA and the 2023 housekeeping bylaw amendment, it has been determined that the occupation of prime locations with real estate offices does not contribute to the vibrancy of downtown. Further, the recently completed economic development strategy, which includes a retail gap analysis, confirms that the town must strengthen their commercial core through the attraction of additional retail businesses. It is the opinion of staff that permitting the proposed temporary use is not supportive of these findings of the recently completed strategy, and as a result is not consistent with the policy goals of the official plan for the Central Business District area. Further, as previously noted in August of 2023, Council will recall that Council passed a housekeeping bylaw 2023-075, which included a number of general amendments to the zoning bylaw, one of which was the prohibition of real estate offices in any buildings located within the lands fronting on and flanking on Muskoka Road North and South between Church Street and Phillip Street. As the subject property is within the specified geographic location, the establishment of new real estate offices within this location is now prohibited. This was done in response to consistent and ongoing feedback, as we heard earlier, from the BIA to have more retail spaces available in the downtown. Planning staff were able to support this prohibition based on the general principle of having a vibrant downtown that offers shopping opportunities, and would note that the zoning limitation on retail offices in the downtown core has also been adopted by many other municipalities, as many downtown cores are seeing a proliferation of this type of use. Given this relatively recent change in the zoning bylaw and the intent of which it was included, it's staff's opinion that permitting this use is not appropriate and does not meet the intent of the zoning bylaw. With respect to agency comments, the chief building official, no objection. Fire and emergency services, no objection, subject to Ontario Fire Code and Building Code requirements. The manager of revenue, infrastructure technologist, and District of Muskoka had no objections. One letter of opposition was received from a Gravenhurst business owner citing the proposed impact on the retail environment, economic considerations, community desirability, the current saturation, and support for local business. This letter was forwarded to all members of council for their consideration. Moving into site photos, this is in front of the real estate office, which was previously a toy store, and you can still see the facade hasn't changed as of yet. This is turning to look back at the side profile of the subject property. To the left is the Albion Tavern, which can't be seen in this shot, but turning, there it is, just to orient you with this major intersection, as I'm sure you're all aware. Also, adjacent and across the road is the postal office. Another view of the properties in the area. Again, here we can also see one of the uses is a real estate office in this shop. We'll see other storefronts here as well, but it's worth mentioning that also on this corner is a real estate office. Looking down, this is just showing again the facades of commercial developments in the area. And again, this is just again to provide more context of commercial storefronts in the existing situation. So as detailed in the staff report, it's the opinion of staff that the application is not consistent with the provincial planning statement. It does not conform to the official plan, and it is not appropriate and represents good planning. As a result, staff are recommending that the application be denied, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Thank you, Mr. Egger. Does the applicant or agent have a presentation they wish to make? Come on up.
Your Worship, Council, Planning staff, thank you. My name's John O'Rourke, 1490 Falkenberg Road, Muskoka Lakes. I'm here on behalf of BBS Investments as the agent for this formal application, but I think more practically speaking, I'm the owner of Royal LePage Lakes Muskoka and the owner of 1100 Muskoka Road South, just at the gates as you come into town. I should give you, actually, I do agree 100% with the planning report, what I received. I think that the vision for downtown is sensible and is it attractive. We have other offices throughout Muskoka, and none of our other offices are downtown. We don't believe in being downtown for multiple reasons, parking being one of them. But I'll give you a little background in the hopes that you'll have a positive reflection on what I have to say. I did email each of the council members Friday just to give you a background summary, just to give you a heads up of sort of where I'm coming from. But I will go through the summary of that. So in 2012, 1100 Corp completed a 6,500 square foot property on our lot at 1100 Muskoka Road South, of which Royal LePage took 3,000 square feet, and it took us about 2.5 years to find another tenant for that other half. And we were diligent in looking for some government services, professional services, that sort of thing, and we were lucky enough to obtain MPAC as a tenant, and so that was great. And so we continued on, and the plan had always called for a second building on that lot, except that we just, and we had searched for potential tenants from 2012 up to present day without any luck. We had a few false starts, but we had nothing. We couldn't get any traction with tenants. The COVID hit, and our requirement for space became considerably less, as a lot of businesses did, and we asked our agents to proactively look for tenants for our space, our current space at 1100 Muskoka Road South. This past winter, or maybe even late fall of 2023, we were approached by Canadian Mental Health to take our space. The one condition, though, is that they wanted the space in fairly short order, and we just couldn't meet the timelines to even to begin to build a building and to move into the other one and give Muskoka and give Canadian Mental Health their space. So the offer went back and forth probably for months and conditional on us finding a space. We did 100 Muskoka Road South became available, and at that point, and I'll take complete responsibility for that, I did go on the GeoHub, as the Gravenhurst site references. It says go on GeoHub and do your research, which I did. Unfortunately, it didn't have the updated zoning, and it didn't make any mention to exemptions to real estate. And if it did, at that point, I would have been to council 6 months ago asking for, a relief in lieu of having Canadian Mental Health come in and a future building. So in any event, I signed the lease, and then Amy emailed me in August and said, via our agent, said there's no real estate. So, So I've met with the town a few times. I thought maybe a committee of adjustments or, some sort, and this is sort of the only time I've ever been in council was 2012 2010 when we were building the original building, so I wasn't super aware of the process, but I did think I thought Committee of Adjustments could handle this. Anyway, this was, I was told to come to council for a zoning amendment. So here I am today, and basically, our challenge as a business owner in Gravenhurst was really just finding temporary space to provide the opportunity for a good employer to come into town, also to give us the opportunity to build a second building on that lot, which I think will enhance the long-term planning for the downtown by giving, in some small way, giving businesses that shouldn't be downtown, giving them an option to go off that exemption corridor. As far as 3 years go, I said in my email that I only need till April 2026. I don't need 3 years. In other forms of compromise, I would be even willing, like my experience with commercial leasing is that qualified buyers, qualified lease tenants take months, if not years, to settle on a spot. And so one thing I'm willing to do in recognition of the current bylaw and the fact that we want to get the downtown vibrant is to sublease or to market the current space for lease with a take-hold date of May 1st, 2026. I can't think of really any other conditions, but I'm open to compromise. It wasn't my intention to, do anything that I felt would be detrimental to the town. I think we've been good stewards, and I think we've always had a good alignment in terms of our vision for the town. So that's about it. So I'm just looking for a positive consideration for temporary relief for downtown.
Okay, well, thank you for your presentation. We will be discussing it in a few minutes, but I will ask, are there any members of the public who'd like to speak to this? Okay, come on up. So we just need your name and your mailing address, please.
Yes, Daryl McCullough, 110 Preston Way, Gravenhurst, the new apartment building. I just want to support John from the standpoint of, I know his family. They've been a user of an employer in Gravenhurst for 30 years. This was something that was, he admits is a mistake, but I know where the mistake came from. They're planning to build a new building that could go up to 5,000 feet. They would take 1,000 to 1,500 themselves and have available space for more. He's ready to make an application for building permit and get moving on that. So those are things that this isn't a long-term idea to be on this corner. The highest and best use is for not a real estate office, so we understand that. And he would absolutely make it a nice-looking corner for the few months that he would be there. So, and I think he'd make a commitment to, in writing, obviously, to be out by a certain time, and that he would go and start marketing that space for a good qualified commercial tenant that could be a long-term advantage to the town. So I just wanted to support that.
Okay, well, thank you for your comments. Thanks, it's been a long day, so appreciate being at the end of near the end of the agenda. So is there anybody else who would like to speak to this? Okay, Councillor, are there any questions for Mr. Ager or for the applicant? Okay, so it's a question, Councillor Varney? Great.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. I guess I'm going to address this to Mr. O'Rourke. I'm asking if you have looked elsewhere in the town, and we do have a building, the train station, which is within a couple of blocks of the main street, which would be ideal. I mean, I don't know how many people you need for the space, but that is definitely something that's open for business as well. So I just wondered if you had considered.
I wasn't aware, I don't know when that became available, but I wasn't aware of that space.
It's been open, it's been available for quite a while,
Okay.
actually, yes.
All I can tell you is that I had Dave Kemp, one of my agents, looking in Gravenhurst for, I wouldn't say an extensive time, but certainly 4 to 5 months, looking for that. So that was an oversight on our part. Yeah, but is it leased though? Like, is it like?
Town owns it.
Yeah, okay. And I had dialogue with the town when they made this, and I'm taking responsibility for this, but I wasn't aware of that.
I don't think Director Halford just said to me, that's not, we did give staff a preferred use for that space, and I'm not sure real estate office was on it, so but good question. Okay. Councillor Varney?
So I guess this is to staff then, if this, if Mr. O'Rourke would be interested in this, and because it's for a short period of time, would the town be willing to help him out? As I would rather see it down there than on the main street myself, and I think a lot of people feel that way. So I guess that's a question to Mrs. Council.
I think that, that's a total other conversation that would need to be had. I don't think we can ask staff to comment on that. I mean, this is not the staff. We would be the ultimate deciders as to where that lease lands. So, in fairness to staff, I'm not going to put them on the spot and ask them if they want to negotiate a lease on the train station tonight. I'm just saying, I think that, I think the point's been heard by Mr. O'Rourke, and the point has been raised by you, and I think maybe there is a conversation to move forward after this meeting, but I don't think, again, that's a question that staff could answer on the fly tonight, so. Okay, so Councillor Morphy, you have something?
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to Mr. Egger. The real estate, it's hard to tell from this little figure what's going where, but it looks like the real estate office is going in the front, and back there's going to be something else. If they flipped and put a commercial retail property up front and their real estate office in the back, would that be allowed?
Mr. Egger?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Morphy. Great question. Based on the definition, it's fronting on and flanking. So even if it's at the back, the idea behind that was to ensure that any building that occupies that main drag, whether you're directly on the main road or a side street still within that building, that use is not permitted.
Okay. Councillor Strength?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Mr. O'Rourke. So where do you stand now then? So does the fact that this isn't permitted, does that nullify your lease?
No, it doesn't nullify my lease. And the bylaw says no real estate office, and it's very specific. And again, I didn't want to get into a situation where do we then put a mortgage company in there? Do we do something else that really has just, like, I agree, it's not overly compelling for a walkabout resident for, whether you have a mortgage company or even a call center in there, but the actual bylaws, as it's currently constituted, allow for that. And so currently right now, we have a couple agents there that are just using it to get internet and typing on their computers, but we're not open to the public. As you can see that there was papers on the windows. As a side note, from Alan from just on Bethune, I ordered window coverings just to make it look better. But right now we're sort of in limbo. We're not operational, so I'm not sure what to do. And I guess, looking forward, we do intend to be the anchor tenant in our new building in 1100. But I do want to continue, we've been here for 30 years, and I do want to continue. I don't want a gap in that business, because that's a hard thing to get back if you didn't have some sort of presence. So, like I said, I'm been racking my brain about compromises, but I'm open to it, and I'm open to conditions, just with the hope that you see that there's actually a long-term net gain to my proposal. So.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other questions? Okay, Mr. Ager, as a result of these proceedings, is there anything you'd like to bring to the attention of council?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, as detailed in the staff report, staff would recommend that the application be denied.
This bylaw will be considered by council later this afternoon, this evening. If there are no further questions, then I declare this public meeting to be concluded. We are going to roll right into public meeting number 7. I now declare this portion of the meeting to be a public meeting to deal with application number Shore Road Closure 06-2022, WRE Investments, Inc. I will now ask for the comments by the applicants or their agent if they are attending in person. Seeing none. Are there any questions or comments from members of the public? No. Are there any questions or comments from council? Nope. I will now ask the Director of Development Services, Melissa Halford, if there are any recommendations or comments to bring to the attention of council.
Staff would recommend approval of the bylaws outlined in the staff report.
Okay, the bylaw will be considered by council later this afternoon. If there are no further questions, then I declare this public meeting to be concluded. Public meeting number 8. I now declare this portion of the meeting to be a public meeting to deal with application number Shore Road Closure 01-2023 and Road Closure 01-2023 for Boak. I will now ask for any comments by the applicants. Seeing none. Members of the public. I don't think we have anyone, so council. Nope. Okay, I will now ask the Director of Development Services, Melissa Halford, if there are any recommendations or comments to bring to the attention of council.
Staff would recommend approval of the bylaws outlined in the staff report.
Okay, so council, we have, we're at the stage of the meeting where we would go in, we have a minor amendment? Okay, so Councillor Johnston, we have a minor amendment that you would like to put forward on the table?
Is that what? Oh, yeah.
So I'm not going to read it. I think the nuts and bolts of it is, oh, I apparently do need to read it. Okay.
Do I need to leave the room?
It's up to you.
Randy has a point of order as well.
Okay, well, he's there.
Because I brought him in.
Okay. Point of order, Councillor.
Sorry, is there not another Shore Road closure there, or am I missing that?
Did them both. It's under new business.
I thought there was another one.
Yeah,
Sorry.
it's under new business.
Oh, it's under new business. Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye. Okay, so it is moved by Councillor Johnston, second by Councillor Hunter, I believe. Whereas a public meeting has been held under Section 34 of the Planning Act, application number ZA08-2023, Lowen and Bowens, and whereas Section 39(1) of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, Chapter P13 states that the council of a local municipality in a bylaw passed under Section 34 authorize the temporary use of land, buildings, or structures for any purpose set out there within or therein that is otherwise prohibited by the bylaw, and whereas further amendments have been made to the proposed bylaw as follows: in paragraph 2 of the preamble, add and section 39 after section 34. In section 1, delete special provision 1329, S1329, and replace it with temporary use provision 15, T15. In Section 2, delete Appendix C to Bylaw 1004 of the Town of Gravenhurst as amended, is hereby further amended by the addition of the following provision. 1329, notwithstanding any provisions to the contrary of Section 17 of the bylaw within Land Zone Commercial Core C1A, subject to the special provision 1329 S1329 on Schedule E06 of Appendix A, described as part of the Lot 8 range east of Muskoka Road EMR in the Town of Gravenhurst, District Municipality of Muskoka, being south part of Lot 63, Plan 2, the following special provision shall apply. Permitted uses, one maximum of one shipping container shall be permitted for storage purposes to support a commercial use, and replace it with Appendix D to Bylaw 1004 of the Town of Gravenhurst as amended, is hereby further amended by the addition of the following temporary use provision. T15, notwithstanding any provisions to the contrary of Section 17 of this bylaw, within the land zoned commercial core C1A on Schedule E06 of Appendix A, described as part of Lot 8, range east of Muskoka Road EMR in the Town of Gravenhurst, District Municipality of Muskoka, being south part of Lot 63, Plan 2, the following temporary use provision shall apply. Permitted use, a maximum of one shipping container shall be permitted for storage purposes to support a commercial use for a maximum 3 years. In addition, add and Section 39 after Section 34, and whereas Section 3417 of the Planning Act provides that council may determine whether further notice is to be given where a change is made to a proposed bylaw. Now, therefore, be it resolved that council, after due consideration of a proposed bylaw and amendments thereto, concludes that the amendments are such a minor nature that no further notice need be given with respect to the proposed bylaw. So, in a nutshell, I think we are agreeing to the proposed bylaw for a term of 3 years. So will Councillor Johnston be fine if I just ask for debate on this, or did you want to speak to it? I think it's self-explanatory. Councillor Johnston?
No, I think, Your Worship, enough's been said on it, unless you have anything further to add on it. My wrist is tired from writing that.
Okay. Okay, well, very good for you. Okay, Councillor Jorgensen, you wanted to speak to the amendment or the minor amendment? Yeah.
Yes, please. I'm just wondering as well, if I look at the bylaw, and one of the regulations is a visual barrier shall be maintained, and I'm just curious we've heard, I think, from Mr. McCann that the applicant is willing to paint the container in the meantime, but I'm just wondering if it's a temporary use, putting a visual barrier up, is that a fence around the container? Or it seems to me that for a temporary use, I don't know if that would be something that we would require. I guess I need definition of what a visual barrier is, and is that a fence or something like that?
Is that captured within this amendment, or is that at bylaw stage? Either way, let's just get it answered so we don't have to pull the bylaw maybe. Okay. Mr. Ager?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, so shipping containers are regulated in the town zoning bylaws, we're all aware, and in the shipping container specific section, it does have language about visual barriers. So for Councillor Jorgensen's information, we have required visual barriers to be used in the instance of temporary uses for shipping containers and other ones for permanent ones. So it's not as if you apply for a temporary one, you waive the having to do the visual barriers, and the zoning bylaw is explicit in what those visual barrier options are.
Okay. Councillor Jorgensen, does that answer your, can't see you, so Councillor Jorgensen, does that satisfy?
Thank you. So I'm just wondering if Mr. Ager has that in front of him and could tell us what those visual barrier options are.
Is it, okay, Mr. Egger, is that something that you have at the ready, or is it going to sway your decision, Counselor Jorgensen?
Well, I'm just concerned if at debate stage, we look at other, these other restrictions, and then you have to deal with a minor amendment if you want to change anything. So just wanted to be clear on what the implications of that wording are.
Okay. Mr. Egger?
Thank you, Worship. Through you, I'm going to use two sections of the zoning bylaws for those of you following along at home. Section 5.3.0, shipping containers. Section 4, a visual barrier is required between a shipping container and a street line and an interior lot line and a rear lot line. And then visual barrier is defined in 5.2.7.1, where it says, where in any zone a visual barrier is required, the following works. And then I is A, a wall or a fence. 2 is a continuous unpierced planting of suitable trees or shrubs together with a reserved with planting area appropriate for healthy plant growth, or an earth berm, or a combination of any of the above.
Okay, great. So I'm going to call the question then on the minor amendment. So please vote on the minor amendment.
Can you just hit conflict?
Okay. There we go.
Thank you.
Okay, and that carries. Thank you. Do you want to get Counselor Strength? So it's been over an hour since our last break, and I'm going to take a 5-minute bio break before we head into the bylaws. Okay? So see you back here at 6:05. Okay. Welcome back. Thank you. We are going to do new business. So, be it resolved that report number DV 024106, Shore Road Closure 7, 2024, Stott and Coolza, Morrison Lake, be received for information, and that council hereby declare the following lands as surplus: original Shore Road Allowance OSRA in front of Lot 1, Concession 19, Plan M 369, part of Lot 5 in the former Township of Wood, now in the town of Gravenhurst, District Municipality of Muskoka, municipally known as 1017 Green Place Road. And that was moved by Councillor Johnston and second by Councillor Jorgensen. Is there any discussion surrounding that? Okay, I'll call the question. Please vote. And that carries. Thank you. Okay. So, we're going right into the bylaws. We will be reading a couple of them separately. So I'm going to read them all, keeping in mind that Whitehead Road and Brock Street will be read separately for voting. So I'm going to just read them all first. Be it resolved that the following bylaws be read, passed, and engrossed into the bylaw book. It's moved by Councillor Not Strength Robinson. Second by Councillor Varney. Be it resolved that the following bylaws be read, passed, and engrossed into the bylaw book. Bylaw number 2024-114, zoning, Lougheed and Bowens, Brock Street. Bylaw number 2024-115, zoning, Rumble, Xavier Street. Bylaw number 2024-116, zoning, 1000192374, Ontario Inc., Muskoka Road South. Bylaw number 2024-117, OPA, 1121 Whitehead Road, Gravenhurst, Lake Muskoka. Bylaw number 2024-118, 1121 Whitehead Road, Gravenhurst, Lake Muskoka. Bylaw number 2024-119, zoning, Habitat for Humanity, Muskoka Beach Road. Bylaw number 2024-120, zoning, BBS Investments, Muskoka Lake. Bylaw number 2024-121, Shore Road Closure, WRE Investments, Muskoka Lake. Bylaw number 2024-122, Shore Road Closure and Road Closure, Boak Pine Lake. So I'm going to ask, does anyone want to pull any of these for discussion, deferral, or defeat? So I see Sandy Cairns. Councillor Cairns has her hand. Councillor Cairns?
Thank you, Worship. I believe through staff are asking that ZA 51-2023 Rumble on Xavier Street be deferred.
Okay, and I need a seconder. Okay, so I'll go over to Councillor Robinson. So Madam Clerk, can we we'll just pull that then? Okay. So we're going to, we'd like to have a mover and a seconder for Rumble, for deferral. So a motion deferred. Okay, so there's a motion to defer Rumble on the table. I'll call the question to defer. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay, so please vote on a deferral. Okay, that carries, the deferral carries, thank you. So, I had Councillor Robinson's hand up next. Councillor Robinson?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was actually going to pull number 2, Rumble.
Oh, okay. Counselor Varney, I have you next on the list.
Through you, I'd like to pull number 7, bylaw number 2024-120. Oh, sorry.
It was on.
This now?
It was on.
Just repeat. Thank you. Through you, I'm pulling number 7, bylaw number 2024-120, please.
Okay. I think she wants to discuss it, but let's just, wanted to save the discussions till the end. Okay. Is there anything else anybody would like to pull for discussion? Okay. Counselor Morphy?
Your worship, through you, number 1, have we, with the minor amendment, have we fixed that? Because right now, number 1 is a denial, right?
But we would
Or
have to
the
have
container?
pulled it in order to do that. So the minor amendment is on it. And so somebody, if we wanted to have defeated it, somebody would have had to pull it to defeat it. So it's there and the minor amendment has been added.
Okay, so, okay, got it.
Okay, well, we're not, yes, but we're not there yet. I just wanted to know, there was some earlier discussion surrounding a couple of these others. I was expecting at least one more to get pulled, but if there's not, then that's fine. I thought there might be some further discussion around Muskoka Road, the 15 with the parking, but, okay, no appetite? So, okay, with that, I'm going to call the question on Muskoka Road.
Can we do that? Can we start at the top? Do number 1?
Okay, so Counselor Strength is not going to vote on this one. It's bylaw number 114, zoning Lougheed and Bowens on Brock. Does anybody have any questions or comments? We had the one question from Counselor Morphy, but I think we understand that the minor amendment has been added. Okay? Is everybody clear on what we're voting on? Okay? So it will be permitted for 3 years? Okay? Great, please vote. Great, thank you, that carries. Then we're going, number 115 was deferred. So now we're going to do Whitehead. Yes. Okay, so we have 2 declarations on Whitehead, so Councillor Hunter and Councillor Morphy will not be voting on Whitehead. OPA and the zoning. So please vote. And that carries, thank you. And then now we've got, we're gonna go over to BBS. Counselor Varney, you wanted to pull BBS for discussion?
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. And I do have a seconder with Councillor Strength beside me for this. I really disagree with the fact that this gentleman has come and asked to take and rent this space. This will be the final nail in the coffin for our retail area in the BIA area. It is a very significant corner for the town, and I feel he should have been really responsible for looking into other areas. The fact that he says he didn't know anything about the train station shows me that he hasn't really looked very far afield, because, I mean, that was obvious that it's been empty for quite a while. And the BIA is struggling, and we've had one letter of support to keep the real estate out. I'm disappointed that when Director Taylor went to the BIA and said, what don't you want in this main town? And all they said was real estate. And I mean, it's not her fault, but I wish that the BIA had said any services, that we need the main street just to be retail. But anyway, they didn't do that. So but real estate was the main thing. So this is definitely something that I feel very strongly about, that we have to adhere to this. And I want to thank the staff for saying no. Thank you.
Okay, so we don't need a seconder because we would just vote no if you didn't, yeah, so just so we know. So we're clear on procedure. So we don't need another motion to defeat because but did you want to speak to it, Councillor Strang? Okay. So did anybody else want to speak to this? Councillor Cairns?
Thank you, Worship. I just want to be clear. Staff's recommended no. So if we vote, do we go no along with staff, or do we say?
No, I
So the
mean,
recommendation from staff is no, so what's going to be put up on the screen is saying no.
no, that's, the bylaws are always brought, So unless you want to defer, that's why you have to pull it in order to create an action. So you're always voting in for yes or no.
I just wanted everyone to be clear.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so a yes means that it's fine to accept the bylaw as written. So the bylaws all make it to the bylaw stage, and that's why we have the area, and that's why sometimes we pass a whole bunch of them. So we've pulled it to discuss, like I always say, one of three reasons: discuss, defeat, deny. So it was pulled to defeat, and so you're going to say no on the vote. If that's how you're going to vote, if you want to say no to this, you're going to vote no. Okay? So is there any further discussion on this item? Go ahead.
Your Worship, you did explain it, but I was just thinking it might be easier to, so although staff are recommending turning it down, the bylaw has been written as if, for approval. So it's written in the affirmative, so it would allow it. So if you want to pull something to discuss it, then if you want to deny it, then you would have to vote it down. You'd vote it down. But if you want to approve it, you would approve it. But our staff recommendation it doesn't affect the bylaw. That's your job to determine how you'd like to move the bylaw forward.
So I've made the bylaw by saying no.
No, there's no bylaw. So the bylaws all come to the end of council. All of the bylaws, all the proposed bylaws always come to council at the end. And then it's us to decide what to do with them. So they're always written. Because if we were to approve it, we need to know what we're approving. So again, I think the easiest way is yes. So if you don't want to see it, then you vote no. So is there any other discussion? Okay. Okay. Councillor Strang, you get it?
Yeah, she was a yes, I was a no.
Okay, so. Okay, so we are going to vote on this item on. No, it's fine. And that's defeated. Okay, so now we've got all of the rest of them. So we have zoning 100192374, Ontario Inc. We have zoning 119, Habitat for Humanity. We have Shore Road closure, WRE Investments, and Shore Road closure and road closure for Boak on Pine Lake. Okay, so I'll ask you to vote on all of those. And those carry. And so, before I just go to the adoption of minutes, because that will take all of 5 seconds. Oh, Councillor Johnston?
Thank you, Worship. Very, very quick. I just, what you said and what Director Halford said was absolutely right. Let me put it this way, because it is confusing, but municipalities in Ontario do not pass bylaws saying we're not going to do this, okay? So every bylaw that comes before us says we're going to do it. And you can look at the staff report, whether it's yes or no, but bylaws do not come to us saying we're not going to do this. If you don't want to do it, you defeat the bylaw. It's very simple.
Okay, so thank you for that. I appreciate it. So quickly, I just wanted to say, we just approved tonight 21 units that are going to add to our rental stock. And I think that that is something to be really proud of. We know that housing is a huge problem in this community. These are all, a lot of them are tailored to smaller people as for our housing needs. Our housing needs study has made this a priority, and these types of things a priority. And we should give ourselves a pat on the back. And I think it's really exciting that people want to provide the housing. So, you know, doors are open here. Let's, you know, hopefully we'll have some more good news coming forward. But with that, I will have a motion. Moved by Councillor Morphy, second by Councillor Robinson. Be it resolved that the minutes of the council meeting dated October 22nd, 2024 be approved as circulated. All in favor? Please vote. And is moved by Councillor Karen, second by Councillor Hunter. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2024 to confirm the council meeting held on November 26, 2024 be passed. I think I'm missing a little number there.
We'll fill it in after.
Oh, we'll fill it in after, sorry.
Still
Okay.
change it.
Oh, I see, okay. Please vote on that. And a motion to adjourn, Councillor Strength and Councillor Johnston. And please vote on that.
Sorry, it's freezing on me. There we go.
Okay, see you in January, planning.
Hold on. 4 people need to vote still?
We need to vote on the adjournment.
Someone hasn't voted. Oh, there we go.
Doesn't, okay, great. Thanks for